Good afternoon to you and welcome to this live broadcast of the National Assembly on this afternoon of the March 22nd. The year is 2022. This broadcast being brought possible through the collaboration between the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. The National Assembly is resuming its sittings this afternoon after a 2 weeks recess, with a lot lined up for debate before the floor. And to just mention just a few items that have been highlighted in the order of business is that the House will conclude a debate and also vote on the coffee bill, this being a bill from the Senate, bill number 22 of the year 2020. The House will equally be resuming debate that was interrupted on the March 3rd, and this particular debate is on the Elections Amendment Bill, this being a bill by the Chairperson, Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee. The Children Bill is also another bill that has been given priority in the order paper this afternoon. The bill is currently at the second reading stage, and this is bill number 38 of the year 2021. Also lined up for debate is the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, this being bill number 3 of the National Assembly's bill number 39 of the year 2020. The Huduma Bill, bill number 57 of the year 2021, is also another bill that has been given priority, and this follows the conclusion of the public participation process. The Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, a bill by the Chairperson, Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee, is also another bill that members of Parliament are set to deliberate on this afternoon. The member from Sambweni, Honorable Faisal Bisalim, will, pursuant to Standing Orders number 225, present a petition on the delay in the issuance of allotment letters to the residents of Tumbe Village, and this is in Vingujini location in Sambweni County. A couple of members of Parliament will be asking questions for reply before specified departmental committees, and to just mention a few that will be having questions this afternoon is the member for Kwale, Honorable Zuleika Hassan, who will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Energy that could the Cabinet Secretary explain why defective transformers and damaged electricity poles, and this is in various areas of Kinango constituency in Kwale County, are yet to be replaced despite numerous requests to have them replaced. Honorable Zuleika Hassan will also be seeking to understand what measures the Cabinet Secretary has put in place, if any, to increase electricity connectivity to homes and public institutions in Kinango constituency. Her questions will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Energy. Honorable Badi Twalib, the Member of Parliament for Jomvu, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Transport that when will the government remit compensation that amounts to 664,125 shillings to Mr. Salim Said of Maganda Village in Maritini Ward in Jomvu constituency, whose land was compulsorily acquired by the government. And this particular case happened on the 6th of June 2015, and for the purposes of paving way for the construction of SGR. Considering the inflation from the 2015 to date, when the agreed compensation was expected to be paid out, could the Cabinet Secretary enhance the previous valuations to take into account the inflation? The question for member for Jomvu on behalf of Mr. Said Salim of Maganda Village will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Transport, Public Works and Housing. The member for Magarini, Honorable Michael Kingi, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Transport that could the Cabinet Secretary list the corporate social responsibility activities, if any, being undertaken by the contractors constructing the Baricho Longubaya Bridge and Sabaki Baricho Bridge in Magarini constituency. The member for Magarini will also be seeking to understand that could the contractors through the ministry also consider making infrastructural improvements of Marekezo Primary, Baricho Secondary, Mekatilili Secondary, and Wakala Girls Secondary as part of their CSR, this to mean corporate social responsibility. The questions by Honourable Member for Magarini will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Transport. The business of the National Assembly will, at many minutes from now, take off. And you can also follow up on this live broadcast on our YouTube channel, that is courtesy of Parliament of Kenya, as well as on KBC Channel 1. The Speaker of the National Assembly has just stepped into the chamber, Honorable Justin Muturi, who will be presiding over the business of the House this afternoon. My name is Gladys Mungai. I'm now handing over for the live broadcast. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in wisdom and goodness have appointed the office of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor as your servants whom you've been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come at our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests were committed to our charge. Amen. You ring the division bell for quorum.
The Speaker of the National Assembly The Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, has ordered that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes, and this is to allow for members of Parliament to access the chambers, and this is to give the House the requisite numbers it requires for it to transact or commence business this afternoon. There being a lot for the House to consider during this particular session, and the quorum bell ordering that has been made in line with Standing Orders number 35. According to the current prevailing circumstances of COVID-19, the House requires at least 50 members of Parliament to be in the chambers for the business of the House to commence at any given time when the House is sitting. The member for Meru County, Honorable Bishop Kawira Mwangaza, will, pursuant to Standing Orders number 42A subsection 5, field or ask questions before the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture and Heritage. The questions by Honourable Member for Meru County, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, is that could the Cabinet Secretary state the steps taken to establish and support talent nurturing facilities in the country? And this is in particular to Meru County. What measures has the ministry put in place to improve the said facilities in the country to international standards? What steps has the ministry taken? And this is to enhance the morale of the talented artists in the field of fine arts. Questions by Honourable Member for Meru County, Honourable Bishop Kawira Mwangaza, will be directed to the Departmental Committee of Sports, Culture and Matters Tourism. The Chief Whip in the National Assembly, Honourable Emmanuel Wangwe, has stepped out of the chamber to rally members to make their way into the chamber to allow the House commence business this afternoon. And from your screens, members of Parliament continue streaming into the chamber this afternoon with a lot lined up before the floor of the House. This being the sixth session of Parliament, ahead of the 2022 general elections that are slated for August 9th. The House has a lot of bills to consider before then, and some of the key bills that the House is seeking to dispense with is the Elections Amendment Bill, Bill number 3 of the year 2020, by the Leader of Majority. From the signal.
Now correct.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Order members, take your seats. Honour members, I wish to introduce to you a delegation of staff from the Parliament of Ghana who are seated in the Speaker's Gallery. The delegation comprises of 1, Mr. Obed Apia, who is an Assistant Public Affairs Officer. 2, Ms. Nelly Abe, similarly an Assistant Public Affairs Officer. Mrs. Sharon Kinfu, Assistant Public Affairs Officer also. And Mr. Ibrahim Ansah, also an Assistant Public Affairs Officer. Honour members, the delegation is in the National Assembly on a benchmarking visit, specifically to share experiences and learn good practices on the operations of our Public Communications Department, as well as the Parliamentary Broadcasting Units, among other areas. On my own behalf and that of the House, we wish to welcome the delegation to the National Assembly sitting this afternoon and wish them fruitful engagements during their stay in the country. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honour members, there was a petition to be presented by the member from Sambweni, the Honourable Faisal Salima, who has since written to me requesting for deferment of the petition on account that he is engaged in the constituency today. I acceded to his request, and therefore that petition is dropped from the order paper and deferred to next week when the member will be available. Next.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, the 22nd of March 2022. Number 1, legal notice number 32 relating to the company's beneficial ownership information, amendment regulations of 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the Office of the Attorney General. Number 2, the National Government First Half Budget Implementation Review Report for the financial year 2021-2022 from the Office of the Controller of Budget. Number 3, the 5th Annual Report to the National Assembly on treaties ratified by Kenya from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Number 4, the Annual Report of the National Land Commission on enhancing land governance for sustainable development for the financial year 2020-2021. Number 5, the performance report of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority for the period January to June 2021. Number 6, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Kenya branch for the year ended 30th of June 2018 and the certificate therein. Number 7, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Kenya branch for the year ended 31st of December 2018 and certificate therein. And number 8, the report of the Auditor General for the financial statements, again of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Kenya branch for the year ended 31st of December 2019 and the certificate therein. And number 9, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Kenya branch for the year ended 31st of December 2020 and the certificate therein. 10 is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the following institutions for the year ended 30th of June 2021 and the certificates therein, and these are the Office of the Controller of Budget, the Kenya Slum Upgrading, Low-Cost Housing and Infrastructure Trust Fund, the Railway Development Levy Fund Holding Account, Contingencies Fund, Equalization Fund, the Revenue Statements for the Judiciary, East Africa Tourist Visa Collection, Fee Collection Account, the Kenya Shipyards Limited, State Department for Mining, State Department for Planning, Prisons Industries Revolving Fund, and State Department for Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Blue Economy. The last batch, number 11, is the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect to the following institutions for the year ended 30th of June 2020 and the certificates therein. And these are Simlo Seeds Company Limited, Chemirel Sugar Company, Egerton University Investment Company, the Agricultural Finance Corporation, Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation, Dekut Enterprises Limited, Water Resources Authority, Rivertex East Africa Limited, Kenya Leather Development Council, Bombers of Kenya, Simlo Seeds Company Uganda Limited, and lastly, Lake Victoria North Waterworks Agency. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. The next, the Chairman Select Committee on National Government Constituencies Development Fund Committee, or a representative to the chair. We move on. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Move to the first segment, segment on questions. The first question is by the member for Kwale County, the Honorable Suleika. The Honorable Suleika Hassan. Next question is by the member for Jomfu, the Honorable Badi Twalib Ali.
Mr. Speaker, my name is Honorable Badi Twalib Badi, not Badi Twalib Ali. Mr. Speaker, I raise first question number 74 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works. Question number 1, Mr. Speaker, when will the government remit compensation amounting to 664,125 shillings to Mr. Salim Said of Maganda Village, Miritini Ward in Jomvu constituency, whose land was compulsory acquired by the government on 6th June 2015 to pave way for the construction of the standard gauge rail. Question number 2, Mr. Speaker, considering the inflation rate from 2015 to date, when the agreed compensation was expected to be paid out, could the Cabinet Secretary enhance the previous valuations to take into account inflation? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question will be replied to before the Parliamentary Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. The next question is by the member for Magarini, the Honorable Michael Kingi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 76 of 2022, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary list the corporate social responsibility activities, if any, being undertaken by the contractors constructing the Baricho-Langobaya Bridge and Sabaki Bridge Baricho Road, meant to benefit the residents of Magarini constituency? 2, could the contractors, through the ministry, consider making infrastructural improvement to Marekezo Primary School, Baricho Secondary School, Mekatili Secondary School, and Wakala Girls Secondary School as part of their CSR? Thank you.
Again, the question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Last question is by the member for Meru County, the Honorable Bishop Kawira Mwangaza.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question is 081 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture and Heritage. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary state the steps taken to establish and support talent nurturing facilities in the country, particularly in Meru County? 2, what measures has the ministry put in place to improve the said facilities in the country to international standards? 3, what steps has the ministry taken to enhance the morale of talented artists in the field of fine arts? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Culture, Sports, Culture and Tourism. For the second time, question by the member for Kwale County, the Honorable Suleika Hassan. Member for Kwale County. Member being absent, not desiring to be present, question is dropped. There's no segment, there's no second segment, so move to the next order.
Order number 8, the Coffee Bill, Senate Bill number 22 of 2020. Second reading. Question to be put.
Is this the member for? Is the member not? The member being entertained by the member for Kibwezi West. Is it the member for Ugenya? And this other one who is roaming all over. Honourable members, the debate on this bill was concluded before the House went to the short recess. What remained was for the question to be put, which I hereby do, that the Coffee Bill, Senate Bill number 22 of 2020, be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of Parliament to provide for the establishment of the Coffee Board of Kenya and the Coffee Research Institute, to provide for the role of the national and county governments, to provide for the regulation, development, and promotion of coffee industry and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 9, the Elections Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 41 of 2021, second reading.
Honourable members, this is a bill sponsored by the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, CIOC. It was moved, seconded, and three contributors being the Honourable Medio Thiambo, the Honourable Akinyo Bara, and the person who was on the floor is Jogona Wanjiku, who has a balance of 8 minutes. I believe that must be the member for Kiamba, is it? Member for Kiamba, you have a balance of 8 minutes. The member has still not gotten acclimatized to knowing what time the House sits. And I'm sure he must have been informed that when the House resumes, he will be the first one to continue. Well, member being absent, not desiring to be present, he then loses his balance of 8 minutes and cannot contribute further to this bill. So any other member is at liberty to contribute. And I say, from the request, the Honourable Dan Manzo, member for Makueni. The Honourable Dan Manzo, member for Makueni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity. Sorry, I was trying to share with Honourable Wamalwa the implication of this amendment. Mr. Speaker, in my understanding, I think it's a good amendment, and it is dealing with the nomination of members to the county assemblies. Mr. Speaker, what has been the practice? When a political party meets the threshold, then what will happen is that somebody who is not from a particular county, giving an example like the county of Makueni, we may get a nominee from another county like Garissa or Nairobi or even Mombasa. And that person who does not come from Makueni and may not know the implication of being around that place in Makueni or the issues in Makueni ends up sitting in this county assembly. What this new law is trying to do, Mr. Speaker, although it is deleting quite a number of huge sections which was previously there, Mr. Speaker, is that you limit that particular nomination to that particular county, Mr. Speaker, so that if there are nomination slots to be given for a political party following the political party list, which is presented to the commission and which moves from priority on number 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the people who have been nominated in that particular county, Mr. Speaker, then automatically that political party can only restrict the nominations from that particular county, Mr. Speaker. And it is, you know, this particular section has been abused before, Mr. Speaker. It is seeking to balance with the people who come or who are resident to that particular county, Mr. Speaker. And again, also, the original idea was to acquire the 2/3 gender, which has happened very well, Mr. Speaker, in the counties. The 2/3 gender has really been met in a lot of counties, and this is the purpose of this particular law, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, it has been abused, tried to top up the gender. People have come from different counties and have been taken to a place they don't even know. The people there don't know them, and they have to learn living with them, and they have to learn the issues of that particular area, and therefore, so that they can be effective to the county they are going to be. Mr. Speaker, then this particular amendment has come In my opinion, Mr. Speaker, I think it's a good amendment by the Honorable Kioni, and I think it will serve purpose. It will improve our county assemblies. It will improve the nomination process so that patronage, Mr. Speaker, it does not become the order of the day, and that there could be the people in a particular area, Mr. Speaker, can be served fairly and can be able to see their own people probably topping up the gender or people with disability, or Mr. Speaker, or also, special interest groups can be taken care of very well through the nominations to the county assemblies by a political party. Mr. Speaker, I support, and I think it's a great amendment. I'm sure that particular committee has thought of it very carefully. And Honorable Kioni, who I can't see in the house today, most probably is doing the campaigns, I believe meant very well for the nation, and is going to make changes which are going to be positive, and that particular section of law will not be abused by political parties any longer. I am sure, and I'm aware a lot of people in politics are waiting for that particular moment, and while they are assisting in politics or happen to be very good friends with the political party leaders or influential people in a political party, their misconceived ideas are going to be curtailed by this law, and so that only the deserving people get the nomination in a straightforward manner and can be able to serve their people right. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do support.
Member for Funyula.
Not yet. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving this opportunity to contribute on this very important bill. Honorable Speaker, the issue of nominating members to the various county assemblies has always been a very, very big debate. That's why I allowed the efforts of the committee to bring some amendments that bring some semblance and order to the nomination process. Honorable Speaker, it has been part of our history that after every election, we do a top-up. And this top-up has always come as a reason that some segments of the society that probably are disadvantaged in terms of campaigns. So under the old constitution, nominations were provided for top-up purposes. Honorable Speaker, with the constitution of 2010, brought in the issue of gender parity, so that no single elective body should have more than 1/3 gender. Honorable Speaker, definitely and naturally, in many constituencies, in many counties, women and the youths stand disadvantaged. Women, the youths, and the disabled stand disadvantaged. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this has normally been an avenue to nominate women, youths, and the disabled person so that their voices can be heard and represented in the various county assemblies. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the proposal or the proposed amendment to the Election Act by the committee is timely because it does 2 to 3 things at the same time. Number one, Honorable Speaker, it entrenches the provisions in the Constitution that requires nomination to fill up so that we get the third gender rule. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, it gives room for members to be appointed, nominated from the areas where they vote and they live and they serve. Honorable Speaker, either by accident or by design, many party nominations end up being given to people or persons who do not belong to that particular ward. It has been a practice, and is hopefully these amendments, Honorable Speaker, will cure this problem. There has been very many complaints, Honorable Speaker, that because of friendship to party leaders or party functionaries or party machineries, you end up nominating persons purporting to represent a certain area, yet they do not live there, they do not vote there. Honorable Speaker, a joke has always been said of Busia, and this has been one of the areas that we members of ODM from Busia have received a bashing for the fact that we have always tended or ended up appointing or nominating members to the Busia County Assembly that are not residents of Busia. And we do hope that this particular amendment, Honorable Speaker, will cure that anomaly once and for all. Honorable Speaker, we need in the amendment to have very clear criteria for nominating members of the County Assembly. Because the County Assembly, Honorable Speaker, remain the backbone of devolution. If we don't get the right persons to sit in the County Assembly, we will continuously lose the gains were envisaged under the devolution system. Honorable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to urge all those party functionaries that abrogate themselves or give themselves the duty to nominate persons to sit in the county assemblies to do proper evaluation. Honorable Speaker, it's a shame, Honorable Speaker, for a grown-up man to record that he is disabled, yet is a grown-up man walking 2 feet to get nominated to the county assembly for simply purpose of getting a salary and doing nothing. Honorable Speaker, some years back, it is on record, one functionary from the once roaring Simba party nominated his daughters, 2 of them to sit in the county assembly at the chagrin of everybody else. Honorable Speaker, I do hope such bad manners will come to an end so that the Simba party, everybody knows it, which is as simple as a lion. We hope, Honorable Speaker, over time, we hope this act will cure that particular aspect. Honorable Speaker, I would also propose an amendment to the same, that this nomination actually, the list sent after the elections, because quite a number of very hard-working MCAs are going to lose elections, not because of anything else, probably because they have not done well, or probably because of the party dynamics, or probably some small issues here and there. We shouldn't lose them for that particular purposes. Honorable Speaker, we should also make an amendment so that even a member of parliament who is going to lose this election, instead of going to stay outside in the cold, the experience he has gained here, if he was an active member, he should be allowed to go sit in the county assembly so that they provide oversight so that we have devolution working. Honorable Speaker, of course, there are quite a number of people in this house from various formations who are already in trouble. We should find a way out, because it would seem nice a practice that even senior people are going down to occupy those positions. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I support, but I do believe that the Committee of the whole House will have an opportunity to make a few amendments to align the same reality on the ground and to make sure we save and strengthen devolution. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
It's me.
Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this election amendment bill of 2021. Mr. Speaker, this bill is an extremely important bill because, Mr. Speaker, it deals with the issue of nomination of party lists for party list members. And, Mr. Speaker, what happens is that we are supposed to ensure that the houses, representative houses of parliament and also our assemblies have all cadre of representation. In other words, we are supposed to have women, we are supposed to have youth, we are supposed to have people living with disabilities. And this new amendment proposes also that we be considerate of region. Mr. Speaker, the proposal that has been given in this amendment is that for someone to be nominated to be an MCA in a certain county, they must be a registered voter in that county. And Mr. Speaker, it makes sense because when you look at the responsibilities that are assigned to a member of the county assembly, just like a member of parliament, is oversight, representation, and what is the third one, Mr. Speaker? Anyway, and oversight, representation, and legislation. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is difficult for someone to be nominated to a county which is not their home county and purport to be representing the people of that county. It doesn't make sense. Mr. Speaker, it also doesn't make sense for them to be legislating on behalf of people that are not from their region. If you're nominated to a region that's not your region, you don't even know the problems of the people. So what kind of legislation are you going to bring aboard in that assembly? So generally, I think what would happen is that such individuals would just do a salary for 5 years and be a nuisance. Mr. Speaker, we also have to understand that there has to be cohesion. And there's also a lot of dynamics in our county assemblies. When you bring in a stranger to an assembly, a person who doesn't speak the language, a person who does not connect with the people, really, Mr. Speaker, when the dynamics of that county are occurring, that person is not going to be able to contribute anything. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a logical, very, very logical amendment to the Elections Act, and I support it, and I would like to urge my fellow colleagues to support it. Of course, Mr. Speaker, there are also other issues that we've noted in the issue of elections. For example, these party lists are presented before elections, and my colleague has just ably put it, that sometimes there are people who should be considered for nomination to be in those party lists. But because they had already declared to be candidates, they are knocked out because this list goes before the elections. So, Mr. Speaker, maybe going forward we might consider amending the Election Act to also ensure that those people that lose out in the party primaries, for whatever reason, can also be considered at a later stage. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable Amalwa, and given you jointly with the Honorable Mbui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I want to thank Honorable Kioni for this particular amendment. This is a very critical amendment, Mr. Speaker, because it's trying to operationalize Article 177 of the Constitution as far as membership of the County Assembly is concerned. Mr. Speaker, Article 177 of the Constitution, particularly 1B, it gives a provision for the membership of the County Assembly through the special seats. These special seats, Mr. Speaker, are supposed to be given for purposes of managing the two-third gender rule, so that none of the gender goes beyond the two-third. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that has been abused. I've seen many county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to nomination. You found somebody has been nominated in Kilifi County, and he comes from Siaya County. It has also happened, Mr. Speaker, in Trans Nzoia, where the county assembly, Mr. Speaker, nominated an MCA in Trans Nzoia, and that particular MCA comes from Bungoma County, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the key functions of a member of the county assembly is to legislate, is to represent, is to oversight. When it comes to oversighting, Mr. Speaker, is particularly in line with that county, the relevant county, Mr. Speaker. So it goes without saying, Mr. Speaker, it will add a lot of value if you nominate someone who is a resident, who is a voter from that particular county. Because when it comes to matters of representation, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to representation, each county has some unique cultural practices, or it has its own traditions. So you need somebody, Mr. Speaker, who will be able to represent them effectively, somebody who is registered from that particular county. This is something that has been abused, Mr. Speaker, mostly by party leaders, Mr. Speaker, because this issue has cut across all the political parties, Mr. Speaker. And this bill is coming to heal so that a given county, a given jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker, if they have a provision to nominate, they'll only nominate one of their own. Somebody who is conversant of that particular county, Mr. Speaker. So when it comes to matters of representation, matters of legislation, matters of oversight, Mr. Speaker, it will be done effectively. Mr. Speaker, people living with disabilities, this is an issue, Mr. Speaker, that must be handled, because we've seen some people who come from different counties being nominated to represent the people living with disabilities in different counties, Mr. Speaker, and yet they don't even know them. So this will bring a lot of hygiene as far as nominations are concerned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward, last week we had a meeting in Trans Nzoia County where we met different aspiring candidates as a party, Ford Kenya. And this is a matter that came up, Mr. Speaker. The county assemblies were raising, the candidates were raising, that some people, Mr. Speaker, they are involved heavily as far as matters of the party are concerned. But when it comes to nomination, Mr. Speaker, the party leaders, including Honorable Munyinyi, who is our party leader, Mr. Speaker, they tend to nominate people from other counties. Maybe they are related, or they are girlfriends, or they are boyfriends, Mr. Speaker. So this is an issue which is going to resolve a lot of problems. Mr. Speaker, sometimes back, Mr. Speaker, we wanted to propose, if it allows, so that this party list, Mr. Speaker, can be presented after, as opposed to before. so that even if it comes to controlling the two-third gender, they can give nominations to those women who had attempted and lost the elections, the best losers. I remember it was Honorable Nyokabi in the last parliament. I don't know how that proposal disappeared. If we can find a way, Mr. Speaker, and be able to amend, if you allow, if it's not going to be significant, we amend when it comes to the committee of the whole house, so that if possible, the party list can be presented afterwards, so that political parties can also reward, particularly those women who attempted to run in the elections and they were the best in terms of losing. Somebody who has made an attempt, not just getting people from nowhere, Mr. Speaker, and they find themselves being sworn in. If that allows, Mr. Speaker, to be very good, and my brother here from Siaya is agreeing with me, we can propose that amendment so that the party list can come after elections, so that those women who played a lot of role, who added a lot of value as far as campaigns are concerned, they can also be rewarded and can be able to represent their cases effectively, particularly, Mr. Speaker, when they come from their respective counties. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Member for Ugunja.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I wish to, from the outset, to support this amendment bill as proposed by the Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. And I wish the House could pay some attention to the issues I'm going to raise. It must be understood clearly that first and foremost, this top-up list, or what we are calling the party list, is not just about nominating women. It is not meant just for women to be nominated. It actually presupposes that either of the two genders can fall short of the 1/3 quantum in the respective assemblies. And therefore, even as we draw this list, usually we craft it in a zebra manner. That is, we have a woman followed by a man, by a woman, and so on and so forth. Assuming, of course, that no one clearly knows which gender will have fallen short of the requisite numbers in the respective assemblies. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed true that this process has been abused considerably in the past. And this bill is attempting to cure this problem. And the only thing I would want to add here, Mr. Speaker, is that the principle behind the party lists is that political parties that actually eventually nominate their preferred persons to these assemblies is supposed to have latitude, is supposed to have the leeway to determine who in particular they would want to have nominated in the respective assemblies. And therefore, it is also true, therefore, that if you leave it open, that any person can be picked to represent a political party at any assembly, then there is a tendency for people to clamor or to fight for the few chances that are available in those assemblies that are considered as lucrative. And the assemblies are mostly in the cities, such as Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and what have you. And therefore, this bill is going to once and for all address that problem, such that if, for instance, you are not a voter in the great county of Siaya, that at no given time, will you ever find your name in the party list, of whichever party. Secondly, it must be understood that the party has got the leeway to reward its people. Its people here means its members, its registered members. And therefore, It depends on how the party has performed. The determination of how many members are nominated by a political party to a particular assembly depends on how that particular party has performed in the elections of that particular year. And for instance, therefore, if you have a party like my friend Honorable David Ochieng, I don't know where he is, if you have got a small party such as Honorable David Ochieng's party, and you end up getting a 0 seat, you end up not getting any word under your leadership in the elections, then it follows clearly that you are not entitled to nominate any single person to the assembly of SIA or any other assembly for that matter. So that it creates parity. It creates parity, it creates equity. It rewards parties for their performance in the elections. It also rewards individuals who belong to those parties for the good work they've been able to do in those parties. And that's why I also agree with the proposal being put forth by my colleagues, the Honorable Manzo and Honorable Omalwa, that if it were possible, of course, we can still effect that through legislation. These lists need to be presented long after elections, post-elections, when we are clear what is the landscape, when we are clear about the landscape, who has performed how and who is it that has worked how or how much that deserves nomination to what kind of assembly. So that is very important. But finally, Mr. Speaker, I think it's also important, even as political parties present their nominees or the list of nominees to the IBC, that we use that opportunity to enhance the capacity of the respective assemblies. Because as you know, the law currently allows any person, really, without any minimum level of education, to be elected as an MCA. That is now clear, or as an MP, for that matter. So this list, this party list, provides an opportunity for the political parties to enhance capacity in the assemblies. How? They can choose to nominate people with requisite capacities, people with certain academic background, people with certain qualifications, who can then go and add value in those assemblies. But if, long after elections or before elections, you are presenting names of people who have got similar handicap, similar problems as the ones who are being elected, so what are you doing? What are you doing? Why can't you use this opportunity as a political party to pick the very best, even amongst all these categories? Even among the disabled, there are people who are qualified, eminently qualified. Among the youth, there are people who are qualified. Let's use this opportunity in the party list process to enhance the capacity of the county assemblies. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that we are addressing this, we are discussing this bill, we are debating this bill early enough. Immediately have resumed from recess. It's my prayer that we can be able to dispense with all these election-related bills way before we break finally in June, so that the IBC can be able to put in place mechanisms to implement this proposal that we are passing in this House. Because some of these proposals are going to be integral, are going to be important in the management of the elections of August 9th this year. And therefore, I am happy, Mr. Speaker, that the House Business Committee has prioritized this bill and similar bills that have got something to do with the elections of August this year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Honorable Russell, you have put praised an intervention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise under Standing Order 95. Considering the mood, and also the speakers are unanimous about this particular single amendment to the election bill. For that reason, I want to request the mover be asked to reply so that we move to the next bill, which is also about election. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, honour members, you and the member for Saku, the Honorable Russell, rise in his place and claim that the mover be called upon to reply. I've seen some murmurs from some of you. I have no way of knowing whether that is the mood. unless I get it from yourselves. I'm sure many of you now remember the famous ones of Speaker James Lentho, spoken on the 4th of January, 1642. So, honour members, I put the question, which is that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Mover, Honourable Ntoimaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to, on the outset, to thank all the members who contributed to this bill, amendment bill, that they have really done what is necessary to ensure that the bill is debated well and also to be considered for passing. I also want to thank the committee members who worked tirelessly to ensure that we visited several stakeholders and got the necessary information and also inputs on the bill. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I also want to appeal to members, now that we are almost towards the tail end of our session here, and there has been a problem of quorum. I just want to appeal to them that this is a very critical bill, amendment bill, so I appeal to them that we turn up during question time, when the questions will be put, so that we can be able to pass the bill without any hiccups. I beg to reply.
Honour members, I put the question, which is that the Elections Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 41 of 2021, be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of Parliament to amend the Elections Act number 24 of 2011.
Honour members, is the Honourable Wandai here? He's gone out. He's made some very passionate plea about election-related bills. And I'm therefore also at the request by the Leader Majority and the chairperson of the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, I reorganize the order paper so the next order shall be order number 15. Next order.
Order number 15, the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021, second reading.
Honourable Ntoimaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021, now be read the second time. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to amend the various sections of the Election Campaign Finance Act 2013, number 42 of 2013, in order to align its provisions with the Election Act 2011, and further proposes amendments that will enable its full implementation. The bill seeks to repeal the provisions of the Act establishing the expenditure committee that is established by a candidate, political party, or a referendum committee for purposes of regulating spending by a candidate or political party or a referendum committee during the election period on a referendum campaign period, as the case may be. The committee observed that public funding of political parties alone cannot sustain campaign requirements of political parties, and the candidates, thus, it was necessary for candidates and political parties to raise additional funds for political for campaigns privately. That it will be unfair, Mr. Speaker, for political parties or candidates to be required to raise money from personal sources and then require them to establish an expenditure committee consisting of third parties to manage and regulate their expenditure during election period or referendum campaign period. The bill proposes to repeal the political party expenditure committee, the independent candidate expenditure committee, and the referendum expenditure committee, respectively. That the bill further proposes the repeal of Section 10 of the Principal Act, which provides the requirement of a candidate or political party or referendum committee to submit expenditure report to a commission containing all records of income expenditure. The bill proposes to repeal Section 17 of the Principal Act and mandates candidates or political parties to disclose any surplus funds to the commission and guides how the surplus will be applied. Mr. Speaker, this is quite unfair, because if you are raising money from your own sources, including even selling your own assets like land, and then you bring somebody from outside, a party from outside, and maybe they can also be infiltrated by maybe opponents. So the bill is provide that provision of the law above, which requires political parties candidates after end of election to declare a surplus and afterwards surrender the same to the charitable organization, is quite untenable. In the bill further proposes to repeal Section 27 of the Principal Act, which mandates the Auditor Controller General, upon the request by the Commission, to audit the accounts of the campaign expenses of candidates, political parties, or expenditure committees. This is because almost all the funds applied in the campaigns are privately sourced funds. Mr. Speaker, the committee, in the process of going for public participation, they also interacted with IBC, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Kenya Law Reform Commission, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the NGEC, the NCCK, and Inter-Religious Council of Kenya to hear their views. The committee also had diverse dates, undertook the hearings on the bill in the counties of Nairobi, Nyamira, Bungoma, Homa Bay, Busia, Embu, Kirinyaga, Meru, Laikipia, Kilifi, and Kwale. Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan political environment requires that a candidate or a political party ventures into elective politics should source for and have sufficient resources to sustain the campaigns. In most cases, the candidate is required to raise the funds from their own personal sources. These sources have involved sale of assets like land by candidates in order to raise enough resources for the campaigns. It therefore becomes hard for candidates who has disposed all his assets, for example, to be required to establish an expenditure committee consisting of parties or persons who may not be the same ideals to manage the funds. So this amendment bills goes along to amend those sections and also to assist in ensuring that the committees that are meant to oversee the expenditure are actually removed from the Principal Act. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with the competitive political environment, the risk of infiltration and undue influence from members of the candidate or political party or expenditure committee by opponents in thus breaching the mistrust between such candidate or strong political party and the expenditure committee members. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to dwell much on this. I want to, I beg to move and request my deputy, Honorable Kaluma, to second.
Honorable Kaluma. Campaign financing.
Yes, I thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to second the chair in moving the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill of 2021. Honorable Speaker and members, only two issues. This law is required to go into force beginning this election. And what it requires is that from the time of party primaries, what we call nominations, to even the time of elections, the political parties, the referendum committees, all candidates of political parties and independent candidates must form what is called an campaign expenditure committee, to which they should give all the money they should be using in the elections. Honorable Speaker, a short while ago there were regulations which were brought, which were nullified by this Parliament on the recommendations of the Committee on Delegated Legislation. But these still remain in the substantive law, and if we do not act on them, Honorable Speaker, they will be required to enter into force beginning this nominations, which is why it is very urgent. What we propose to do under this bill, Honorable Members, is to delete those requirements being imposed on all candidates of parties, on all political parties, and the referendum committees, whenever they are, to form those expenditure committees. And the principal, Honorable Speaker, is just one. The campaigns for the political parties and even the campaigns of independent candidates, the political party candidates, are not being funded by the state. So they are not, public funds to be required to be given. Honorable Speaker, if we were to allow this bill to enter into force, and I'm happy it has become impracticable, it would mean I just time the expenditure committee of my opponent, buy them out, and they disappear. So these monies are an individual's money. This law, in the manner it is crafted, is infringing on the right to property, including how you handle your money. We are not, Honorable Speaker, removing the requirement that an individual can disclose, if required by IEBC, the accounts from which you are drawing funds. An individual must state the capping limits in law. We are not enforcing them, but we are making alterations also on the requirement that these expenditures be audited, because the Auditor General, in terms of the constitutional mandate, Honorable Speaker, is to audit public funds, not private funds. We are saying that we are removing these expenditure committees because the bill, though seeking accountability, is based on the US law, where particular candidates, particularly presidential candidates, are funded by the public coffers. Honorable Speaker, those are the things we seek to do. We are securing accountability. We are now leaving it to the IEBC if they want to put in the Electoral Code of Conduct a requirement that you disclose your accounts and of course, to oversight it in the manner they can. The other reason as to why this law, Honorable Speaker, has been impracticable or impossible to enforce is that if you look at the number of candidates we have, even at this level, and this I'm addressing to Kenyans, if you look at the number of candidates, even at the level of party primaries and nominations, they are in thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands. And this is in respect of all political parties. Can our Office of the Auditor General, go auditing all of them? But number two, even if with their skeleton staff they were to do so, is it public funds they are engaging in?
So we're just deleting those requirements of expenditure committee, but the accountability measures, the financial caps for campaigns are still there. And with those few comments, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second and ask the members to support this so that we can expedite and cleanse that environment. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I propose a question, which is that the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021, be now read a second time. Member for Kabuchai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To give my views on this very important particular bill. Mr. Speaker, when we make such decisions, we must first differentiate between public funds and private funds. When one looks for his money, Mr. Speaker, and wants to run a campaign of his own, Mr. Speaker, those are private funds. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, we do not have a central pocket where all candidates go and draw money to use to campaign. So, Speaker, if there are countries where they contribute for you, then after the campaign, Mr. Speaker, you must declare what is balancing. So, Speaker, again, the law, the bill does not understand or recognize that even we have losers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you lose and you have run and you lost, Mr. Speaker, when they want to come and audit you, say, declare how much. So, Speaker, one, you are paying for with lack of money. You have lost money, Mr. Speaker. And again, they want you, Mr. Speaker, to declare even what is left from your committee. So, Speaker, as one puts it very clearly, one does not need rocket science to finish you, Mr. Speaker. He only comes and buys your committee. And then your committee will run away with the money, Mr. Speaker. This will bring more problems than it can manage. And as well, Mr. Speaker, this is tedious. It is tedious because when does this law begin to work, Mr. Speaker? Does it work before nominations? Does it work after nominations? If it's before nominations, Mr. Speaker, we have thousands of candidates running from MCS to members of parliament to governors, women reps, even the president, Mr. Speaker. We cannot, the office does not have enough staff to put right every candidate and how much one should run, Mr. Speaker. So according to me, Mr. Speaker, I think this is not right. And again, Mr. Speaker, it's only the candidate who is a vision bearer. He is a vision bearer, Mr. Speaker, who knows the interest of him. Mr. Speaker, you can have a committee that doesn't know, does not believe, does not have the vision. And Mr. Speaker, they will abuse the fund that you intend to spend very well. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at this bill, Mr. Speaker, we tend also to give a way out, Mr. Speaker. And it's a leakage. It's a strategic leakage, Mr. Speaker, in that one has how much for this budget. It's also, Mr. Speaker, it depends. When you want one to have a certain amount, Mr. Speaker, and we come from different constituencies, we come from different demands. One running a constituency in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, is different from one running a constituency in Bungoma. Mr. Speaker, we cannot have a standard view, a standard value that you need such an amount for this area, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and this one, I support the removal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kitui West. Member is not there. Honorable Kimunya. Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support the committee on this bill, which is not only very important but very timely, especially given the season we are in and the contradictions we have, that we have a law but we don't have regulations. And we all know the history of that issue is IBC seem to have delayed in bringing the regulations, and when they brought them in the wrong way and the wrong format. Hence, we have a law, we don't have regulations in terms of what to do, but it could well jeopardize the whole election and bring a lot of tension because people will be challenging that people have been elected, they didn't have these committees, and yet the committees cannot operate without the regulations, and hence, it's important, first of all, we tidy up our law. In principle, and I want to ask the member for Kabjai to know, in principle, the law is not bad. It is premised on the law that operates in the US. But unfortunately, because of our cut and paste, we seem to just cut and paste things to bring the US law or the United States of America law into Kenya without looking at what else needed to be done to make it to accord with our local dynamics. In the US, any candidate who is running, whether as an independent or the political party or whatever, is obligated to form what is called a political action committee. And it's that political action committee that fundraises on behalf of the candidate and does everything for the candidate, and then accounts for the monies. There's also restrictions as to how much any person can give. I believe right now is $2,900 that can be given by any one individual to a candidate. So there are restrictions in terms of that. And when that money is pulled together, you then use it for all manners to do with your campaign, except for personal issues, which means you can't buy your suits because you need to appear as a candidate and say, people have fundraised for me. You can't, there are some limitations as to what you can use on that money. And contrary to what we have provided in our law, that account is never closed until you stop being a candidate. So even if you lose an election or win an election, so long as you're still desirous of running in the next election, you can continue keeping that committee. Now, unfortunately, in our situation, we had thought after an election, within 3 months, you must close this account and give the money to youth activities. Now, what has my fundraising got to do with youth, women, and disability activities? You know, it doesn't make sense. And that's what I'm saying. In our cut and paste, we never thought about some of these things. Because when people are fundraising, they'll be fundraising on a certain issue. If I'm fundraising on issues to do with Kipiperi, it's a potato growing area. I want people to see that if you help me, I'll help you agitate for potato issues. Or for example, a certain governor in Mombasa might be looking at the blue economy. I have Kipiperi Mountain, I'll be looking at climate change. So if I fundraise money to then agitate for climate change, then you tell me that after 3 months, that money should go to youth, women, and issues of disability. It will be a con, it will be a fraud on the people who actually gave money for promotion of climate change issues in Parliament when the money is directed elsewhere. So it's a timely thing that much as this has been occasioned by the need to synchronize the law and regulations, or the absence of regulation and the operation of the law, that it also gives us an opportunity to sit back and say, yes, we need a law that will control electoral financing, because we also don't want people receiving their money from some terrorist organizations or some undesirable activities that happen in the streets at night. You know, because we're still a morally upright society. We want to know where you're getting your money from and what issues, because whoever pays the piper is likely to call the tune when the person gets into the house. But that does not necessarily mean we do it the wrong way. And hence, I see this as an interim thing. We clean up, we go back to default settings, and then we sit in the next house early enough for those who will be lucky to be here, and now look at what we need to do with our electoral financing. What mechanisms do we need to put in place? How do people fundraise so that, because also it's an important thing. We need to encourage the Kenyan people to fundraise for their candidates. Right now, as a candidate, you fundraise for the people. You are forced to pay into every harambe, to buy a cooking pot for every area, to buy a tent for every area, yet the people want you to represent them. Yeah? So the people don't own you. You seem to own them, or you have bought them through the whatever gifts you've given them. And I think when we continue on that basis, we will never get rid of corruption, because we start corrupting our electorate through the demands they make of us. In the developed countries, it's the people who promote you to be a candidate, and they fundraise for you. They ensure that at some point, they're even taking some students now to school to try to train them to become future leaders and politicians, and then they support them so that you then know you belong to the people. They have sponsored you, they have a stake in you. But in our country, it's the reverse. We are taken through, the ringer. Yeah? By the time you are through, I'm not even sure how many of these action committees will have anything anyway, because of our nature. And especially, when you start disclosing to the committees that we have now fundraised 10 million shillings, you can be sure by the next weekend, there's a whole pile-up of people who have come to say they would also want to be part of ensuring that is done, so that at the end of it all, you may not even have any money to pay for your electoral expenses in terms of agents and all that. So basically, I agree totally that, yes, we retain the issue of the need for disclosure of the amount and the sources, which is important. But in terms of, those expenditure committees, which again, like I said, were borrowed from the law in the US, we can, first of all, put that on the back burner by removing them from the law. Then we will bring them properly when we now know what we need to do for this country. And basically, so most of these things are, again, consequential amendments to removal of the committees. Without the committees, there will be no reports, there will be no expectations of what will be done, audits of those committees, and all that. And the rest is really very straightforward. I hope the public out there understand that this is not about us protecting ourselves, but it's about making sure that we don't end up with complicating the electoral processes with laws that are, as the lawyers might say, may be otious, yeah? May not be, or probably not even applicable, although they are alive, but they have no environment for them to be alive is not there. And in that complication, we could end up with electoral challenges that, with the litigious society that we have become, that would only mess up the output of the will of the people that they have expressed on the 9th of August. So I want to congratulate the committee for having brought out some of these issues, and ask members that we fast track this bill. We really don't want to discuss it so clear-cut. We fast track it so that it can get to the Senate. They also do their bit, and then we can ease the burden on the electoral body so that they are not committing resources to start receiving reports on our committees and establishing who will go to Kibipiri to look at my committee when the matter is overtaken by events. So the earlier we can do it, the better as we move through this. But like I said, it was a good attempt, although poorly done in 2013. I wish I was there. We probably would have done it differently. But again, it copies almost a huge percentage from the US law on this, but again, without the necessary modifications for the local scenario. So with those few remarks, I want to once again thank the committee and ask that we support them in the passage of this bill, and we move on with life. Beg to support.
Member for Arienda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for some time I labored, assuming my card was showing, only to discover it wasn't. So I'm glad now I am visible. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this amendment bill, and I want to congratulate the committee. Mr. Speaker, in my view, the law as is right now is highly ambitious, fantastic, and near utopic, especially in our circumstances where we do not have the necessary financial and legal infrastructural support for the kind of things that it provides for. And I agree with the majority leader that it is of no point to make provisions that are unenforceable in your circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that, for example, Section 7 that is to be repealed, which provides for the expenditure committee, it makes provision for a committee, assuming that that committee will probably work pro bono. And it does not even say who's to finance the committee in terms of expenditure or emoluments. That is imaginary. No one will work pro bono in such circumstances. Section 10, that talks of filing a report with your political party if you are a candidate. Political parties in this country are funded to a certain limited extent, mostly by default. Even now, my party of ODM, I think, is owed almost 6 billion Kenya shillings. But even when they are funded, they never fund the candidates. So why should I make a report to a political party which does not give me even a shilling? On what principle? Mr. Speaker, when you look at Section 27, that gives the leeway to invite the Auditor General to audit even the expenditure of an independent candidate. You can imagine how many independent candidates we have from the level of MCA to MP, all the way to governor and possibly even president. It makes that provision without talking about who will fund the Auditor General. The Auditor General is funded, underfunded as we speak, and has to really stretch, to audit the public institutions under its charge. If you are to extend to this, their work will be diluted and it will be impossible. Mr. Speaker, I agree that we need to carry this along. Indeed, we will need to rethink in future how really we want to regulate campaign financing, because the model so far that we've adopted is not suitable to our circumstances. The English used to say that just like English law, it must be unique, like the English baobab. You cannot just hope to take it and supplant it and it works. My only question, Mr. Speaker, to the chair, and this is a question I wanted to indicate in respect of the early amendment. When you see, for example, what is now section 16, after section 7, the amendment there, they still read a candidate political party and a referendum committee, and it continues. That is the language so far adopted in the rest of the Act and also in the Elections Act. We just made amendments in the recent weeks where we have provision for a coalition political party. And I want to urge that as we are going to consider the amendments, let every such provision read a political party or a coalition political party to cover instances when it's not just an individual political party. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for also giving this opportunity to contribute to this important bill. And I want to start, Honorable Speaker, by also thanking the committee for coming up with these important amendments. And more so, bearing in mind, Honorable Speaker, that the regulations were actually nullified by this House, which means, Honorable Speaker, there is a likelihood of some clauses hanging and be not very clear. So this initiative to make this amendment is very good and is commendable. So, Honorable Speaker, as I support, just want to make 3 observations, Honorable Speaker. The first one, I agree with those who are saying, Honorable Speaker, that campaign financing in this country is not a public function, it's a private function. Honorable Speaker, most of the people who aspire to be politicians in this country go out of their way to look for resources. Some would sell family property, Some would go out there, get loans in the banks. Others would even do fundraising using their friends. And that being the case, Honorable Speaker, I don't see at what point the law would expect me to have my own private resources or on my own money being then managed by a committee. Because at the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, this being my own money, I'm supposed to be dictating how to use that money and who gets the money. So to me, the fact that there is no public financing of campaigns in this country, I think then this particular clauses are misplaced. And that's why I agree with the committee that then we need to get them out of this law till we get to a level where we can, in a very structured manner, agree on how to conduct our campaign financing. The second point, Honorable Speaker, is the issue which has been mentioned by Honorable Otiende, the issue of expecting the Auditor General to go out there and audit accounts of independent candidates. Looking at the number of independent candidates and looking at the number, the many public institutions, the Auditor General audits, Honorable Speaker, I think we are expecting too much from this particular office, which we are all aware as a House, that it's already underfunded, it is already understaffed, so we are actually trying to create a responsibility which cannot be implemented because of the numbers. So, Honorable Speaker, for me, I think really this, but and even if you look at the kind of money we are pushing the Auditor General to start auditing, majority of the people will spend between 10 million to 30 million. We are saying that the Auditor General should create time, set aside resources to come and look at my resources as an independent candidate where I've only spent 10 million, while the same Auditor General is expected to audit a constituency called Kitui Central, which has a budget of about 100 million every year, and he has no time for that because of the shortage of staff. So, Honorable Speaker, I think really we need to be serious in terms of this law. And that's why my humble request is that, honorable members, we support these amendments. And even as we support, then we look for a way of fast-tracking the passing these amendments so that it becomes an act of parliament. In that way, then we'll be able to secure and achieve the objectives we are targeted to achieve. But for the future, then, we need to come up with another law, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Kimunya had said it was like there was an oversight 2013. Now I know, Honorable Speaker, we are at a stage where we've learned a lot, we are experienced now more, and then we can craft a law which can then help this country and seriously help the issue of campaign financing. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Member for Kwanza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance. And on the very, very onset, I want to support the committee for coming up with this amendment. First and foremost, this is an issue, this is something that is not applicable in this country. Mr. Speaker, I have been in politics for some time. I've participated in the election almost 4 times, or 5 times to be exact. And this is not workable here. I think whoever was proposing this, to me, is somebody who does not know what is happening. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, the proposal here and the amendment that has been made, to me, is quite inadequate because campaign funds are, in this country, are private. I look for money. I may raise it from my relatives, from my friends. I may raise the money by selling part of my property. And that has been the case all the time I've been in politics. And therefore, for me to be able to surrender this to the committee, I run a risk of somebody. And in this country, the Speaker, we are all corrupt. People are corrupt. We have that problem that is with us in this country. It's possible. But it's possible, the majority, it's possible somebody can come and buy your committee. Tomorrow, you have nothing. And then, of course, when you have finished your campaign...
So when you say, Honorable Wanyonyi, you say now you are all corrupt. That, of course,
including myself. Including myself.
No, it doesn't get this way. It says that.
Mr. Speaker, not with a light touch, but on a serious note, Mr. Speaker, this country we are actually trying as much as possible to see how best we can be able to run our country. But there are people, there are elements. You can bring even your own brother, who may even come in and sell you, and you find the funds are gone. So what do you start with? So this is actually an American philosophy, and I don't think that's applicable here. And in any case, you audit the money that is my personal. So I think this amendment is correct, and we should be able to support it. And let's implement it as soon as possible before we go for election. So that at then you know, the worst part of it that after you have raised the money, you take it to and then you have finished the election, and maybe there's a balance of a month, 2, 3, 4 million shillings, and it goes to the charity. It doesn't make sense in this country. And therefore, I think this amendment is quite good, and I think we should be able to raise it and finish it so that we implement it before the next election. I support the amendment.
Member for Funyula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the Election Campaign Financing Management Bill 2021. Honorable Speaker, politics is a game of competition. Politics requires amassing resources of different types and form to campaign for elections. Honorable Speaker, the idea of controlling campaign financing looks plausible, looks reasonable, and looks the most ideal situation. And indeed, the world all over, and as for our country, we have no choice but to find mechanisms under which you can bring sanity into the campaign financing. Honorable Speaker, there has been numerous complaints that money power, resource power, has enabled undeserving candidates to win elections. That is granted, and probably those who crafted this bill or this act had that view that it's important that we do not make money the primary consideration in electing a person for various positions in this country. Honorable Speaker, however, a law should never be cumbersome. Honorable Speaker, a law should not be onerous. A law should not be impossible to implement. A law should not stifle the election process. A law should not continue the disadvantage placed on some category of politicians or aspirants. Honorable Speaker, what the law had provided for was actually a discouragement. Women, people of low educational ability, people in the rural areas, people in the informal sectors, probably who are unbanked. It will become practically impossible, Honorable Speaker, for them to participate in the elections. And it was going to make it even more expensive to mount an election campaign. Honorable Speaker, as my colleagues have said, it's practically impossible to ask somebody to become a member of the committee controlling, for example, millions and millions of money, which he or she can see being transacted every day, yet is not being paid for the services rendered. That, Honorable Speaker, is tempting somebody beyond reasonable scale. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the amendments being proposed in this bill are timely and basically needs to be implemented immediately. Honorable Speaker, I sit in the Committee of Delegated Legislation. When EIBC brought the regulations pursuant to the parent for existing act, we looked at them, we questioned them, and on the face of it, it was not possible to implement those regulations. Honorable Speaker, let's face reality. You have been in elected position, politics. Some of us have been in elected politics for some time, even though we managed to come here in 2017. Our election announcement as winner was postponed in 2013. Luckily for the time, God's time is always the right time. Honorable Speaker, it is an expensive undertaking. Many times you are unlikely to get benevolent benefactors to give you sufficient funds. You end up using your personal funds, family funds, surrendering that funds to people, a committee that does not even understand how those funds have been acquired, giving them to manage on your behalf is asking for too much. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the various amendments provided here, Honorable Speaker, in the original act, they talk about an expenditure account. As I mentioned, Honorable Speaker, many of the rural voters, many of the rural candidates would have no bank. And that's why I would ask even the committee that when you go to Section 2, Clause 2, Section 2 of the current act, the issue of expenditure committee should also be included among the clauses to be deleted in the amendment. Because to provide for an expenditure committee opened by a candidate, a political party, or a referendum committee. If we are dealing away with the committee management committee, we also need to then to expunge or delete a make expenditure account. I also want to draw the attention to the committee that we pass a law here about a public collection act, something like that. And we change the definition of the word harambe. I can see still being retained here. This will be the most opportune time to delete the same. Honorable Speaker, the proposed amendment to the Party Expenditure Committee under Section 7 of the Act, that's acceptable. Number 8, Candidate Expenditure Committee, that's acceptable. Number 9, Referendum Expenditure Committee, submission of expenditure reports. Honorable Speaker, in the 2017 election, before it was postponed in implementation, we were forced to open these accounts, we were forced to form committees, and we were forced to do so many things. Honorable Speaker, I think this is actionable under the right moment. Asking the Auditor General to come and audit accounts of thousands and thousands of candidates who are going to participate in any given election is asking too much beyond the capacity and even the call and the remit of the Auditor General. The Auditor General is under no obligation to audit private funds. In any case, Honorable Speaker, the Anti-Money Laundering Act is an adequate avenue to track down any illegal or illicit flow of funds in the campaign cycle. So, Honorable Speaker, let the Auditor General do the work they're supposed to do. If at any time there is any complaint about excessive expenditure, the law as it stands now, and again the amendment has spoken to it, nothing stops a IBC from asking a candidate, asking a political party to explain the source of funds and generally determine how the same can be controlled. The provision to stipulate the capping still remains. So therefore, essentially, the spirit of the act remains. What has been deleted and what is being proposed to be deleted are those cumbersome provisions. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, there is a presumption here, Honorable Speaker, that for you to win an election, you'll have to use money. That's the spirit of the act. Yet we know so many people, so many candidates, by the nature how they have presented themselves to the electorates, generally spend very little money or no money at all. I have a friend here, Murigi, I think so. He campaigned on a bicycle. You do not need much resources to change tires of a bicycle, to ride a bicycle, you don't need fuel. You can actually do that. Many times in the past, candidates have walked, especially the MCA candidates, have walked on foot and generally won elections without expending money. We should get this notion out of our mind that for any person to win an election, you need money. I speak this for those aspiring politicians I speak for those aspiring candidates. Do not go out of your way to look for so much money to bribe voters. If voters do not want you, however much money you give them, whatever you do, they will not vote for you. That's the truth of the matter. I have a candidate in my constituency running for an MCA seat who has styled himself XY Bila Pesa. And the motto has gained traction. There are very high chances that he's going to win that particular seat. Simply has told people he has got no money, vote for me for my credentials, vote for me for the things I have done. And I want to encourage those outside there intending to win election positions. Please go to talk to the people, explain your mandate, tell them what you'll do for them, but mostly importantly, project an image of a trustworthy person, an ethical person, a person who believes in transparency and accountability, and a person who respects the electorate, who respects the other candidates, not candidates who the medulla operandi is abusing and insulting other candidates from day up to night. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Member for Igembe South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the committee. Mr. Speaker, this report is a timely report and amendment. Mr. Speaker, it will complicate the coming election if we would go as per the high BC and proposed to go all through that details of election financing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for this country to establish a financing procedure which would be followed to the latter, we must, there must be a more regulated law which would be followed, Mr. Speaker. And currently, Mr. Speaker, for the elections we are holding, Mr. Speaker, it is the candidate himself who is funding for his or her campaigns, Mr. Speaker. So it would be more difficult for the Auditor General to audit the account for the candidate who aspires to vie for the various political positions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we would say that we wanted to do a law which aligns with the U.S. law, Mr. Speaker, but the U.S. law, Mr. Speaker, is a law which has all the platforms and which, Mr. Speaker, would be followed easily, Mr. Speaker, since there are some set committees to conduct the fundraising. There are committees, Mr. Speaker, which are supposed to check on the candidate, Mr. Speaker, and there are a limit, Mr. Speaker, of the contribution if the money is being funded for the candidate, Mr. Speaker. But in this country, Mr. Speaker, there is no set law, Mr. Speaker, which is set to limit the financing of a candidate. Maybe when a candidate has a fundraiser, Mr. Speaker, to raise the money for the election, Mr. Speaker, there is no law which is set to control the amount which is supposed to be raised for a certain candidate, if it is a member of parliament or MCA, senator, or maybe the president, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, there is no law controlling how much somebody who willing to contribute for an aspiring candidate, there is no law which is set to control the submission or the money being contributed by that person, Mr. Speaker. So it would be more difficult and it would bring crisis, Mr. Speaker, whereby one would complain that his accounts are being audited, whereas it is his or her account, Mr. Speaker. So this law will enable us to conduct a smooth election, Mr. Speaker, without getting any candidate, Mr. Speaker, complaining that he has been followed maybe by Auditor General, whereas that candidate used his his own money, Mr. Speaker, to campaign. Mr. Speaker, also in this country, one would vie for any political position, Mr. Speaker, without even spending even a single coin. So it would be something which is cumbersome, Mr. Speaker, for that candidate, since that candidate may be having some funding, Mr. Speaker, to just register as an independent candidate and then sell himself, sell his manifestos without using any currency, Mr. Speaker. And this is what we are supposed to encourage in this country, so that we can have leaders who are performer-oriented, Mr. Speaker, since nobody who will claim to the voters that he has spent money to campaign and now he is siphoning money, Mr. Speaker, to claim back what he spent during the campaign, Mr. Speaker. I think also we can, through this law, Mr. Speaker, in the next Parliament, we will also improve this law, whereby the candidates who are campaigning, Mr. Speaker, for any position, the electorate would be encouraged that the candidate to be elected should be a candidate who has the manifestos which are attainable and which are pro them, Mr. Speaker. So it is right, Mr. Speaker, to support this amendment from the committee, so that at least the coming election would be more smooth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also in this country, we have experienced many politicians, Mr. Speaker, who have been in political, Mr. Speaker, or in politics for long, Mr. Speaker, complaining against this auditing of the account, and also the sources where they recover or where they get the campaign's money, Mr. Speaker. But if we have already existing law, or if we have an existing law, Mr. Speaker, which is already checking the sources of the money, the work of the auditor, Mr. Speaker, would be more simple. So I support this amendment, Mr. Speaker, and I urge the House also to support and we pass this amendment so that at least it can, the law can be in action before the election. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, in keeping with our rules, there are no further requests for contributions, and therefore the natural thing to do is the mover be called upon to reply. Honourable Ntoimaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Even the Honourable Kioni is not keen on contributing to this one. I don't know he is the originator. But I think he is satisfied with what his successor has done.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you so much for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to, first of all, to thank members. However much that it has been done very quickly, but nevertheless, because of that fast tracking, I think it is in order that we thank them, because it seems this is very well understood. And the members who have contributed have really done the necessary, and they have hit the nail on the head. So thank you so much for that. Mr. Speaker, it is true that as we deliberated, the issue of expenditure committee actually is somehow misplaced, because if you invite people who are not party to the resources that are some of us are using, or other members are using to finance elections, then there is that fear of leaking secrets. You know, being a competitive nature, being a competitive sport, or rather exercise, politics is about also keeping secrets and keeping intelligence. The moment you invite people who are not part of that particular expenditure to your own. It's like inviting foreigners to your house. So actually, it's not good for the expenditure committee to be involved in private issues that are concerning finances. Then the issue of the Auditor Controller General. From my understanding, Auditor Controller General is supposed to audit public funds only. But when you invite Auditor General to audit private funds, it is not the right way. Actually, it's maybe even illegal. And then secondly, we have also established that Auditor General, besides not having enough financing from his office, resources to enable him or her to audit public funds, the Auditor General does not also have enough personnel, both human resource and also financial resource. So it is quite in order to say that we don't need Auditor General to be involved in this matter. So I think so. So furthermore, when they are auditing the organization that is going to be audited, there are over 5,000 people who compete for various positions, right from, actually even more than 10,000, right from MCS to members of National Assembly to Senate, governors, and other positions that are women reps, and all these other positions that are liable for competition during election. So, Mr. Speaker, I also want to appeal that we fast-track this amendment again, just like the previous one. We fast-track this so that we can be able to pass this amendment and to become a law, actually before even we do nomination. So I beg to reply.
Very well. So at least on our members, we have done that one, leader of majority. You are shown to be the one moving the other election-related law bill. The one appears at order number 14. It's in your name. Or do we go back to the order paper? Give the Honorable Kimunya.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I would have wanted to move that bill, but the chair of JLAC has asked that they present the report tomorrow. Then we can do it probably within, immediately we receive that report. Okay. But they are considering it, and they will be tabling it either tomorrow or Thursday. And it will be important for us to have that report. Yeah.
Very well. Well, I can't put the question on the one by the Honorable Ntoimaga for reasons that the House does not have quorum for us to put the question. So we want to go back to the order paper. We go back to the order paper.
Order number 10, the Children's Bill, National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2021, second reading.
Honorable Kimunya.
Honorable Speaker, I want to ask for your indulgence to allow me to move this bill while taking cognizance of the fact that the committee has yet to complete the report. But it's taking so long for the committee to actually bring a report. Yet, it's a very important bill. So if you are agreeable, I can move the bill and we continue processing it while they bring the report before we go to third reading.
Agree with you.
Okay.
The committee is taking forever. Is it the Labour Committee?
This is the Labour Committee.
The Honorable Kabinga, member for Mwea. I thought it started off on a high note, but now seems to have gotten overwhelmed. I will allow the leader majority to move the bill and even have it seconded, and perhaps other members to contribute.
Yeah.
But we will not close debate. We will not close debate as second reading, so that the chair of the committee and his members will have a chance to tell us what it is that they have heard from the public. Proceed, Leader of Majority.
Okay. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Children's Bill, the National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2021, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, the principal objects of this bill is to give effect to the provisions of Article 53 of our 2010 Constitution by firstly making provision for parental responsibility, fostering, adoption, custody, maintenance, guardianship, care, and protection of the children, and secondly, making some administrative provisions for and regulation of children's institutions and the institutions mandated to cater for the welfare of children, and thirdly, and very importantly, to establish the National Council for Children's Services, which is the policy-making body that is responsible for supervision over the planning, financing, and coordination of child welfare activities in the country. Honorable Speaker, as members would appreciate, the promulgation of our 2010 Constitution, which was billed as very transformative, set a first pace for some far-reaching reforms, both in terms of policy, in terms of legislation, and also in terms of the creation of institutional frameworks necessary to implement those reforms and the policies. And these were designed to meet the renewed aspirations as well as the heightened expectations of the people of Kenya in the context of a very robust Bill of Rights. And although much of these reforms have so far been accomplished by the 11th as well as the 12th Parliament, the issues to do with children were kind of left in the back burner, and hence the Children's Act of 2001 still remains the operating law under which matters to do with children are considered, yet we had very progressive pronouncements within the 2010 Constitution on matters to do with children. So it actually falls short of the constitutional standards that are set for the promotion and protection of children's rights, and it really poses some very major challenges on the full realization of these children's rights. And it is in this sense that this noble legal instrument comes for consideration before the floor of this House. Now, Speaker, by way of background, the pressing need for the review of the 2001 Act to accord with the Constitution is anchored on a number of main issues that need immediate reform and articulated in the bill. And with this include the need to change the appropriate age of criminal responsibility of children to accord with the 1990 United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the 1999 Africa Charter, Rights and Welfare of the Child, which have all made provisions to the effect that the right age of criminal responsibility for a child is the age of 12 years. Currently, our 2001 Act puts that age at 8 years. So an 8-year-old child is deemed to assume, criminal vulnerability and responsibility for acts of a child of 8 years, and yet the world has moved to 12 years. The other issue is the need to qualify inter-country adoption, such that for inter-country adoptions to be approved by a court, the adoptive parents had to be either citizens of Kenya, who are not ordinary residents in Kenya, or citizens of Kenya who have dual residency, but are not ordinary residents in Kenya. And as such, an inter-country adoption can only be allowed if the applicant parents are citizens of our great republic. And again, this has issues to do with avoiding our children being used or being adopted for purposes other than being given parental care out there by people who are not Kenyans, who may not necessarily care about Kenya, but will be using Kenyan children for other issues. And several abuses have been cited, including organ harvesting, including being used in sex trade and other illegal activities. I'm sure this is one of the issues that has raised a lot of concern during the public participation, and even within the committee of the whole. By the time we finish this, I'll be asking this House to look at this matter on adoption, especially the inter-country adoption, so that we tighten the conditions. And some people have even suggested that there should be no inter-country adoption without the express authority of, at the highest level of the president, so that we make it a bit difficult, rather than just give it an institution or a CS, we make it a bit difficult for people to take Kenyan children and take them out there, and once they've adopted them, they have no recourse. We have no recourse in terms of getting those children back. But the person who authorizes a Kenyan child to be adopted should be at a very high, we set the threshold quite high. So that's one of the issues that will be coming at the point of the committee of on the third reading. And I would like members to really concentrate on this bit, on the adoption so that we know how to protect the Kenyan children. The other item is the need to update our standard and processes in respect to the foster care placements. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, in section 1772 of this bill, it provides some overriding objectives of foster care to include protection, nurturing of children by providing a safe, healthy environment with wholesome support, to promote long-term parental care, again towards family reunification, for instance, in the first instance, and by accommodating children in alternative, safe, and nurturing family relationships intended to last and promote growth of the children in family relationships in the context of Kenya's cultural, ethnic, and community diversity. In addition to the objectives, this bill, most importantly, makes provision for parents who can qualify as foster parents, so that not anyone who finds a child decides that they can foster that child, there has to be some conditions to ensure that that child will not be moving from the frying pan to the fire in the name of being fostered. And it also will bring into issue the whole application process for foster care and the conditions that are set for that. And the fourth item that this bill intends, necessitates this bill, is the need to cure the manifest inconsistency within the Constitution. As you know, this bill introduces some new definitions and reviews the definitions contained in Section 2 of the current Act to conform with the Constitution. And also makes reference to devolved units of service delivery, which is the counties, thus ensuring that the recognition of the changes in our structure of governance owing to the coming into effect of our 2010 Constitution. Honorable Speaker, this bill makes some very substantive improvement to several provisions of the Children's Act of 2001. And in respect to Section 4 of the realization of the rights of the child, it does mandate the Cabinet Secretary to undertake the development, review, and implementation of relevant policies, legislation, programs, and realization and actions to ensure the realization of the rights of the child. With respect to Section 7, the bill prescribes what shall be paramount consideration in all actions and decisions affecting children, and it does provide a schedule containing a list of matters that must be considered by the public or private social welfare institutions, the courts of law, administrative authorities, or even legislative bodies when taking actions or making decisions concerning children. And Mr. Speaker, the sum total of these provisions is a major significant improvement on the matters necessary for consideration in respect to what is basically referred to as the best interest of the child. Mr. Speaker, the bill goes further also to set out the rights of the child in terms of protection from child labor, and the proposed provision is a substantive enhancement of the current Section 10, and it prohibits, with reference to children, the issues of domestic servitude, the use, procurement, or offering for slavery, or practices similar to slavery, debt, bondage, servitude, forced or compulsory labor, and provision of personal services by a child, whether or not for gain. And Honorable Speaker, I'm sure we all know how our children have been misused. I'm not sure whether when we were growing up, we would have survived this law, although we were providing that labor within a family background. But we've also seen how children are actually being removed from schools to be given some cheap labor because they are cheaper to employ than the gazetted casual workers. And this bill will sort out that issue so that children below the age of consent should actually be in school. And the government has provided, and our constitution has actually mandated it, that that basic education is compulsory and free. So nobody has a reason not to be out of school. And by the time they are finishing their basic education, they are now at the age of about 18, which means they can now go and start working and be able to negotiate wages and all that. But before that age, they should not be used as houseboys or house girls and providing labor. We need to protect them within the framework of the law. Now, Section 20, again, looks at the protection of the child from protection from abuse. And it basically, again, substantially expands the scope of the current Section 13 of the 2001 Act by, firstly, expanding the scope of abuse of a child to include subjecting the child to emotional and mental distress, and also, secondly, clarifying that abuse can be perpetrated by means of electronic systems, information and communication technology, network, or other communication technology, and using terms in conformity with the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act of 2018. And again, this act will go a long way. We see our children and grandchildren, their toy of choice these days is the mobile phone. But people have also been known to pass within those gadgets material that could well pollute the minds of these children. And it will become a crime because the children are now going to be protected from any stress or distress that arises from interaction they have with material coming through the IT space. The bill also goes further again to appreciate that there are instances that may require extension of responsibility beyond 18 years, and basically expand the scope of Section 28 of the 2001 Act, which includes special needs arising from severe disability or developmental disorder as one of the special circumstances that might justify the extension of parental responsibility beyond the age of 18, which is considered the age of majority. But that will be by the order of, by an order of court. Madam Speaker, another very bold and potentially far-reaching provision proposed in this is in clause 93 of the bill. And this new introduction basically which authorizes the Chief Justice to, firstly, designate children's courts in counties and sub-counties by notice in the Gazette, and secondly, appoint a magistrate or magistrates to preside over the cases involving children by notice in the Gazette. Additionally, the bill proposes the appointment of a registrar and deputy registrars to be appointed to serve in these children's courts. This certainly is a progressive proposal since it not only ensure that children issues are handled with care, and to seek to reduce delays and grant child relief, especially in criminal-related matters, and to avoid the contamination the children are likely to have when they are bundled together with adults in the same courts, in the cells, well, we still need to protect them from that contamination. Honorable Speaker, let me also point out that the bill makes a timely introduction in respect to what we call a child in need of care and protection. In other words, the children we find on our streets, the children we find abandoned, and the bill expands, again, the provisions of the 2001 Act by including the following new categories of children as falling within the definition of children in need of care and protection, which include a child who is in the company of a parent or guardian who is detained or held in custody or in prison or in remand. That child is the fact that the guardian or parent is held in custody should not make the child to be an appendage of the parent in custody, also to be held in custody, but should be considered as a child in need of independent care and protection. Right now, I think you'll find children who will probably be in Langata Women Prison. I've never quite understood how our ladies, when they are in the prison, end up getting, in a all-female prison, end up getting children, but they do. We don't know, but it happens. And then those children end up being detained within the prison system, yet, they have it's for nothing of their own that they actually conceived or born within that situation. The other situation is a child whose parents are unable to provide for him or her proper care and attention by reason of, again, being intensely engaged in litigation over custody and maintenance or other related family dispute prejudicial to the well-being of the child. So as they are fighting over who takes the cat, who takes the dog, who takes the house, who takes the cow, and the children are left to suffer. And we've seen lots of this, and unfortunately, this has not been necessarily confined to people at the lower echelons of society, but it has happened even at higher levels. And we've seen very big families fighting over property, and the children are languishing in hospitals. They can't even afford to pay bills because it's not even clear who will be paying. So those will be children that will then be considered as requiring in need of care and protection. It's also will apply to a child whose parent or guardian is below the age of 18 years age. Again, the child has nothing to do with the fact that the mother or the father or both were below the age of consent. But we can't punish the child because of the sins of their parent. The other category is also a child who has been subjected to forced male circumcision without their consent, which has now been brought in because they require special care. A child whose life is in danger or whose security is threatened by a member of the family. A child who is a victim of human trafficking. A child who is kept in any premises, in the opinion of an authorized officer or a medical officer, is overcrowded, unhygienic, or dangerous, among other things. And this list is quite exhaustive, but it tries to capture all scenarios where children need to be protected because they found themselves or they've been placed there by circumstances beyond their control, and children don't really have much control over their circumstances. And hence, it's only society that can actually protect them. Honorable Speaker, like I said, the last amendment to this Children's Act was in 2001. This is 21 years. A lot of work has been done. A lot of consultation has been done. And if there's any bill that has received the widest level of public participation, it's probably this one. I've attended I did attend one of those public participations because I really wanted to know what is all these people are discussing. And you could see the passion with where different stakeholders have on this matter. Because there are very many people who have something to say about a child and a protection of a child. And indeed, the last time I saw the committee report or the list of amendments, they were almost getting to about 300 pages. And I did ask the stakeholders that there's something called paralysis through analysis. We would also want to have the very best or the most ideal, but that ideal to one person may not be necessarily ideal to the other. And that's why there's all this protracted need, and we are not even getting to finish this public participation. But we have to, draw a line at some point and say, let's give to the Kenyan children a law that they will use for now. It can be modified in future as situations change. But for now, we know we already have a deficit, that we have a law that is not in accordance with our constitution. We have rights that are in the constitution that cannot be operationalized because there's no enabling law. And hence, time is of essence. And I'm glad that when the speaker did allow that we move this as we wait for the committee report. Because members of this House must pronounce themselves on these matters to do with children and bring this debate, knowing also that we need to take it to the Senate. And it will be so unfortunate, after waiting for 21 years, that this Parliament does not give to the Kenyan children a law that will protect them into the future. And I would like to see that the 12th Parliament has actually delivered to the Kenyan people. And I wish to thank all these stakeholders, including the current Chief Justice. She has been involved in the development of this law at different stages in her career. And she, even before she rose to Chief Justice, she chaired the judicial committee that was looking at this. And the input has been very heavy in terms of what happens within the judiciary on children's matters to do with the judiciary. The Child Welfare Society have been involved in this. The National Council of Children's Services have been involved in this. UNICEF have been a major player in this matter. And basically, all the organizations that have something to do with children have been very vocal in this. And I want to thank them and several others for their input in the development of this bill. It's a rather bulky bill, but the long and short of it is basically the issues I've highlighted. And I would wish that members can familiarize themselves with the bill, and we get to add whatever improvements we need to the work that has been done over the last 20 years by all these experts. And then we bequeath the Kenyan child the protection they require within the law, and so that when we see any child out there, we can all say the Kenyan child is well protected within the law. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I want to cite part of the wisdom of Madiba, the late Nelson Mandela, on this subject matter when he said, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And I believe that is our clarion call, that there will be no keener revelation of this Parliament's soul than the way it will treat our children of this Republic. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move, and I would wish to ask Dr. Otiende Omolo to second.
Dr. Otiende Omolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second this bill. Mr. Speaker, in 2001, the Children's Act was a landmark. In the face of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, it became a mere beacon, and it has become necessary to overhaul the Children's Act as it was, That overhauling has taken us all of 12 years. It is now time to settle on it and make such adjustments as would be necessary. As is clear in the Memorandum of Objects, the bill seeks to align the Act to the Constitution of Kenya. The Constitution of Kenya made far-reaching changes to the rights of children and to reciprocal responsibilities that come with that. For example, what is in Section 6 of this Act is drawn directly from the Constitution: the right to a name and the right of presumption of citizenship for children below the age of 8 years. What is in Section 7 of the Act, of the bill, draws from the constitutional stipulation that the best interest of the child will always be the overriding principle. What is in the proposed Section 13 of the bill, Section 12, speaks directly to what the Constitution provides as the right to free and compulsory basic education. The entirety of the bill seeks to align itself to the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Mr. Speaker, it is one that is timely, it is one that is detailed, and it's one that needs very deep and sober consideration. It is one in which I urge the members to really take a keen interest during the committee stage, more than sometimes we do, because it has in some provision very positive and far-reaching provisions, and it also has provisions that must be deeply considered. Mr. Speaker, being acutely aware of the fact of our timelines and being acutely aware that a lot of these things we will deal with at the committee stage, while reserving my liberty to make substantive comments and or amendments as may be necessary, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Honorable members, I propose a question, which is the Children's Bill, National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2021, be now read a second time. What is out of order, Honorable Odo?
Honorable Speaker, I have keenly listened to Majority Leader of Majority Party, has moved the amendments or the bill. I've also listened to the seconder, and all of us agree that the children's bill is so important to the welfare of these welfare of children. Wait, I'm not, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. Honorable Speaker, I know what is point of worry. Honorable Speaker, yes, I know.
You didn't have any plan to
okay,
do what
fine.
you
Honorable Speaker, I know it was important for the bill to be moved, and he clearly said the committee has not presented its report because of the overwhelming interest in respect of this particular bill. And Honorable Speaker, given our standing order, given our procedure, that means, therefore, after the few who have logged in or shown interest to contribute, you will then put the question to the end of the second reading. And that, Honorable Speaker, my fear, will not have done justice to this particular fundamentally important bill. I seek your indulgence, and I seek the indulgence of the Leader of Majority Party, that if there is anywhere in the standing order where we can defer debate on this particular bill to a time when the committee has presented its report, at least when the committee has presented its report, because generally we can't force members of parliament to come sit in this parliament to deliberate on important matters. But I hope the electorates and the constituents who have the issue of children at heart can see who are members of who are their members who are present or not. I don't know. I'm just seeking your indulgence. I'm seeking any person who is versed with standing order. But I know standing order number 1 gives discretion for you to review, to look at the matter. I just want the members of the public to know that it's a general apprehension that if we proceed as we are now, We will put the matter to question after the second reading, and will not have done justice to the children of Kenya. Yes, I'm ready to contribute. I have my own points. Yes, I can contribute, but that is my palatable fear that indeed, being such an important bill, I seek your indulgence and direction on how to proceed. If there's any way we can defer debate until such a time the committee has presented its report, and we have incorporated all the stakeholders' views, so that those who stand to contribute have the benefit of having read the committee's report, and we have as many members as possible to debate or contribute on the matter, so that we do not deal with it in a matter of one or two members seated here today. Honorable Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to raise that point of order. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Honorable Udo, you know, you are indeed a professor. You read the Speaker's mind, actually, and your request is actually very reasonable. And I will actually direct, because we haven't gotten the report from the committee, that we have as many people who want to contribute to this as are here, but the debate will remain open until the committee tables its report, after which you get another opportunity for members to contribute, and then there will be a closure of debate. So your request is in order, it is considerate, and it is, I have agreed to that. So it will remain open. Yeah, you have the floor.
Sorry. I don't intend to contribute now.
Okay.
I will contribute after I've reconciled my comments with those ones for the committee. But I must commend you for exercising the wisdom of Solomon, and I hope God will give you more years, or will give you enough strength and energy to bring forth many children who will have the wisdom that you have. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Udo, I saw the issue of children coming in. Yes. I could tell. That must end in your statement. But thank you for your prayers. Yes, sir. Honorable members, there are a number of members who want to speak to this, but before then, I would like to direct that we go back to order number 5, because you have a paper that has come, and it is critical that it is tabled. Order number 5.
Order number 5, papers.
Yes, Honorable Kanini Kega.
Honorable Speaker, thank you so much, and thanks so much, Honorable Speaker, for your indulgence. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 22, 2022. Report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on its consideration of the first supplementary estimates for the financial year 2021-2022. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Do you have a notice of motion? Yes, let's get to the notice of motion. Order number 6. Let it be called out by the clerk. Call the notice of motion.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Yes, Honorable Kanini Kega.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, again. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thanks so much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the first supplementary estimate for the financial year 2021-2022, read on the table of the House on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution and Standing Order 243. 1, approves an increment of the total recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2021-2022 by Kenya shilling 125 billion 70,384,778 in respect of the votes as contained in the attached schedule.
2, approves an increment of the total capital expenditure for the financial year 2021-2022 by Kenya shilling 13,790,551,509 in respect of the votes as contained in the attached schedule. 3, approves an overall increment in the total budget for the financial year 2021-2022 by Kenya shilling 138,860,936,287 in respect of the votes as contained in the schedule. And 4, resolve that the attached schedule forms the basis for the introduction of the first supplementary appropriations bill 2022. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I once again thank you for your indulgence.
Okay, honorable members, we'll go back to order number 10. We had Honorable Wanyonyi. Honorable Wanyonyi is, Honorable Wanyonyi, are you ceding your ground for order number 10? I thought you had legislators to speak. Okay. Honorable Odhiambo Akoth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, even though I have just walked in when you are dealing with the children's bill, I really don't need any introduction. I was one of the people who were actually involved in the original development of original children's bill, and I've done quite a lot even in regard to this bill before I left the civil society to come to Parliament. And as a matter of fact, I have a bill, which is a child justice bill, which correlates to a segment of this proposed bill. And Honorable Lillian Gogo also has a similar bill before the House. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not a stranger, and I wish to indicate that I support the bill, but with several amendments. And, Mr. Speaker, what this bill seeks to do is to give effect to the provisions of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and all other conventions relating to children and protocols relating to children that Kenya is a party to. But it also seeks to give effect to the Constitution that the original act was enacted before the Constitution was promulgated. But now, after the Constitution, this act has not actually been put in tandem with this bill. I'll just mention some of the positive things that I've seen as an improvement. One is, of course, the issue of inclusion of diversion, because as much as possible, we are trying to divert our children from the justice system. The only challenge I have is that the issues of children in conflict with the law have been overly condensed in one small section. And therefore, some of the very significant principles around children in conflict with the law may be lost. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that I think is significant is the age of criminal responsibility has been increased, or is proposed to be increased from 8 years to 12 years. And Mr. Speaker, that is very important, because you find a child of 8 years is very young, even of 9 years is fairly young, that if you want to hold a child of 9-10 years criminally responsible for factors that we are the ones who have caused sometimes because we have not given them direction or care. Mr. Speaker, there are many other significant issues that I think I'll be happy about, but I still have a quarrel with some of the issues in respect to this bill. One of them is the issue of children born out of wedlock. Mr. Speaker, as a woman who is married, I think if I was a selfish person, I shouldn't be promoting this, because I'm not likely to bring anybody a child out of wedlock. But my family may experience a child born out of wedlock to me. But because of the best interests of the child, I still promote the best interests of children born out of wedlock. When I was in the cradle, we took to court a matter that was challenging the then Section 26 or 24 of the Children Act, which was discriminating against children born out of wedlock. In the case of RM versus the Attorney General, where a 2-year-old child was being discriminated by the biological father and was not giving her support. The court made a distinction about saying differential treatment and discriminatory treatment, as saying the same are two different things. I have seen that this bill seeks to try and import those two concepts and getting confused in the process by, on the one hand, trying to make differential treatment a positive principle and at the same time making it a negative principle. We can't have our cake and eat it. If we want to protect all children, we will protect even children born out of wedlock. And because of that, I will be bringing an amendment that is in tandem with the Constitution that now protects children under Article 53 of the Constitution that protects children born out of wedlock. And therefore, there is no reason for us to start designating children as this one's born out of wedlock, this one's born out within wedlock. They were not there when the two consenting adults were having the children. They didn't ask the child's permission that can you be within or outside wedlock. So once a child is born, we must take care of all of them. And therefore, I'll be bringing amendments so that we take care of their children in the same way. Again, another issue that I find problematic is the issue of adopted children, that we are also trying to designate who are their relatives within the law. Once you adopt a child legally, that is your child, so there is no reason for us to start designating that this is your child up to this level. It's your child, it's your child. If you don't want to adopt, don't adopt. But once you adopt a child, that child has all the legal rights that should go to or accrue to any other child. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, that I think is of concern to me is, of course, also on the issue, Mr. Speaker, of custody and even the way we are defining legal custody. And Mr. Speaker, I will be proposing certain amendments even in relation to the issue of legal custody and the way it is defined under this bill. Mr. Speaker, I think I may not go to every single issue that is of concern to me, but one of the other issues that I've seen that is of grave concern to me is even the way we are defining intersex children. In one of the, you actually discover that the way we are defining intersex children is actually discriminatory and stigmatizing. The Kenyan government has actually classified intersex person, and there are laws that actually now define intersex person. And I think what people need to understand that intersex people are not an intersex person is not a transgender, neither is that a lesbian or gay person. An intersex person is a child who, through no fault of their own, has two organs, both male and female, occurring at the same time. And we cannot call them as children with weird or problematic gender. It's not their problem. It's like the way you were calling before people as imbeciles and idiots, which I've again seen again in this one of the annexes or appendixes in this bill, still calling people idiots and imbeciles. That is something that had already been amended in the law. People have mental challenges. They are not imbeciles and idiots, and neither can we call people by all these funny names. They are intersex, not these funny classifications that we are giving them. We are actually, if you look at clause 24(3), we are saying male, female, and children with a disorder of sex development. They are not children with a disorder of sex development. The other thing that I'm concerned about, again, is in terms of the issues of definitions. We are making reference to a lot of things without making definitions in respect to cyber, which is all very good, but I think we need to refer to them or define them in the bill. The other issue that I would want to say is, I know this was obtained in the old act, that we refer to the officers that check on children. We refer to them as approved officers. I think we should use a friendlier term, like maybe child welfare officers, not in relation to Child Welfare Society really, but because they perform welfare checks on children. Even if we don't want to confuse, perhaps then we should call them welfare officers of children. And the reason is because there is a connotation that approved is a negative term because of the children who are taken to approved school. Mr. Speaker, the other issue of concern to me, of course, is the issue of sentences. The sentences in a lot of these are fairly lenient. Mr. Speaker, and I'll be proposing, or rather propose amendments which I'm going to send this evening that seeks to enhance some of the lenient sentences. Mr. Speaker, I can see that my time is up, and because of the limited time, I will be proposing my amendments at the Committee of the Whole House, and there are quite a number of amendments. And because of that, I would encourage the majority leader, because I know that you would want to put this in the order paper tomorrow, but because of the amount of amendments that we are proposing, perhaps you could consider putting them another day. With those few remarks, I support with extensive amendments. Thank you.
Honorable Gogo.
Honorable Speaker, I can't seem to have the mic. Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I appreciate the time that you have given me to contribute to this children's bill. I think I should be appreciated also as one of the proponents of introduction of the children's bill to the 12th Parliament. I worked on a bill, I think, which was overtaken by government, so that it could not be brought in by as a private member's bill, but it was actually brought in as a government-sponsored bill through committee, and I appreciate the persons who have worked on it. The bill which I was working on even went through gazettement, but all the same, we are using one stone to kill many birds. At the end of the day, the beneficiary of our efforts, Honorable Speaker, is the Kenyan child. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, to rise to support this particular bill and work that has been done on the bill by all the stakeholders that have made it possible for us to take care and think of the Kenyan child through legislation, which is the main work. I want to support this bill because of what it has covered on fostering of the children of Kenya, adoption, custody, maintenance, guardianship, care and protection of the child. And also, I'm impressed by the efforts that have been put on making administrative provisions for and regulations of the children's institutions, and also institutions mandated to cater for the welfare of the children of this country. I've also looked at Honorable Speaker, what the bill also seeks to do in establishing the National Council for Children's Services, which is a policy-making body that is responsible for supervision over the planning, financing, and coordination of the child welfare activities in this country that has been done in an haphazard manner. Honorable Speaker, I would also want to appreciate the effort that has been put to especially put the current bill, children's bill that we are talking about, to be in line with the Constitution of Kenya 2010, because we want to bring in the provisions of the Constitution Kenya 10 that have not been formally used to address the issues of children, so that we have this particular bill, Honorable Speaker, stay in line with the supreme law of the land. That is one of the reasons why I rise to support this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are looking at, if we look at the Children's Act 2001, we want to particularly look at the need that there is to change the age of criminal responsibility that has already been talked about by my senior and my sister and my mentor, the Honorable Millie Mabona. She's talked about the need to look at the age of criminal responsibility of children in accord with the 1990 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the 1999 African Charter on the rights and the welfare of the children. I'm also impressed by the need to qualify inter-country adoption such that for inter-country adoptions to be approved by a court, the adoptive parents have to be either citizens of Kenya who are not ordinarily resident in Kenya, or citizens of Kenya who have dual citizenship but are not ordinarily residents in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I also want to point out one of the good aspects of this particular bill, as it also looks or seeks to cure the manifest inconsistency that is with the Constitution and introduces new definitions and reviews, and it also reviews the definitions contained in Section 2 of the current Act to conform with the Constitution. And in regard to this, Honorable Speaker, it would really be very important as an amendment to bring in the definition of what is in the best interest of the child. All the things, all the litigation issues, when it comes to making judgments in court, everything is normally done in the best interest of the child. But Honorable Speaker, there is no specific definition of what is in the best interest of the child, and what is in the best interest of the child most of the time is left for the courts to decide. But if we bring it into law to define what is in the best interest of the child, that is also going to guide judgments, Honorable Speaker, because it is going to be anchored in law. So I really am so happy about discussing matters that affect our children, especially by anchoring them in law, and also putting in perspective what concerns children, minors, who are not able to be in this house to bring in their own agenda as we talk about it, and bring in things that are going to positively affect the Kenyan child. I also rise to, Mr. Speaker, sir, to support this particular bill as it makes substantive improvements on provisions of the Children's Act, especially with respect to Section 4 on the realization of the rights of the child, and also mandates the CS, the Cabinet Secretary, to undertake the development, review, and implementation of relevant policies, legislation programs, and also actions to ensure the realization of the rights of the Kenyan child. I also rise, Honorable Speaker, to support this particular bill in respect to what it does to Section 7, especially its prescription that there shall be paramount consideration in all actions and decisions that affect children in Kenya. It also provides a schedule that contains a list of matters that must be considered by the public or private social welfare institutions, courts of law, administrative authorities, or legislative bodies when taking actions or making decisions concerning children, and especially children of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, another element, another aspect of this particular bill that is impressive is in respect with Section 20 on the protection of the child from abuse. This bill, Honorable Speaker, substantively expands the scope of Section 13 of the 2001 Act by expanding the scope of abuse on the child to include subjection of the child to emotional and mental distress. Honorable Speaker, one of the main problems that we have faced as a nation is a rate of especially suicidal cases among our children in this country. among the pediatrics and among the children who are described or who are put under the category of children. And more often than not, Honorable Speaker, we realize that so many of our children in this country go through emotional abuse and mental distress. So this has been well covered by giving clear definitions, but also clarification has been done by this bill that abuse can be perpetrated by electronic means through information and communication technology systems. And also this particular bill looks at networks or other communication technology systems that bring mental distress to our children. It has well been covered. And also the use or misuse of computer systems, and even the Cyber Crimes Act has also been nicely carved out as part of this bill. Honorable Speaker, as I finish, I hope that we are going to make necessary amendments and have this particular bill protect the Kenyan child. Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.
Shall we have Honorable Geshimo Ideji?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on the Children's Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, I must say that I'm very passionate about children matters. Actually, my initial years of practice, I was in a law firm whereby we were dealing with very many matrimonial and children matters. And I could see the emotions that were at play when children matters were actually were handling children matters. And I must thank the crafters or the architects of the Children's Act 2001, which is being sought to be improved by the current bill, because previously children matters were usually entangled under the Matrimonial Causes Act and the Matrimonial Properties Act. So it was very difficult to separate the issues of property, the issues of marriage, the issues of divorce, and children. And after the enactment of the Children's Act, which made some strides in the improving and separating the issues of children and other matters, we have seen a lot of improvement in handling matters children. Now this bill, in my view, having perused several parts of it, seeks to improve the 2001 Act. And one of the areas that is being simplified or actually improved is on the issues of adoption. Because previously, under the previous bill, it was a bit very, very difficult to seek adoption orders. But this one seeks to streamline and give a very good procedure towards the issues of adoption. I participated in an adoption case, and actually several, and it's been very difficult. This one, I believe it will be very easier, and the children will be able to benefit. Another area is the issue of the Children's Court. Under the previous act, under the current act, of course, because it has not been repealed until this bill goes through, there are no specifications as to how the Children's Court should look like or be handled. But in the current bill, we have seen the introduction of the specificities that should be in a Children's Court, including the friendliness of the court. And another very, very important aspect is the introduction of the registrar of the Children's Court, because the Children's Court have been managed under other jurisdictions, but this one separates the Children's Court from the other courts so that administrative issues can be done without pegging hope on other registrars who are also handling other matters. Probably an area on the Children's Court that needs to be improved on this bill, and which we can have in the amendments, is the contradiction between clause 93 and 94, whereby the Chief Justice is supposed to gazette magistrates to preside over cases involving children in any area of the country. That is 93. But 94 also says that the magistrate in charge of the court station, all his or her representatives shall preside over all cases involving children in respect of the court's jurisdiction. So I believe in my own construction, that is a contradiction. I think we should just have one clause that says that magistrates who are in charge of every station should be the ones to preside over children matters, so that we don't have a case whereby we have a person who is in charge of a court station and is not gazetted to preside over children matters, and then the same law provides that he or she shall preside over those matters. I think that's a bit that we can be able to amend at the appropriate time. And I believe, should I find that the committee will not have proposed an amendment, I will do exactly the same. The other area of importance that has been improved is the issue of maintenance and responsibility towards the children. The previous, or the current act, the Children's Act 2001, it's not very clear, and sometimes there have been wrangles in court over who should take care of what, but this one is a bit clearer, and the magistrates will have an easy way of adjudicating over matters children. Mr. Speaker, since, as I have said, this is an improvement, and we have over, actually there are 251 clauses in this bill, it may not be able to ventilate each and every bit of this bill, but by and large, it is a very, very important bill towards achieving the issues of protection, care of the children in this country and their interests. So, Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I seek to support. Thank you.
Honorable Mutinda. Honorable Mutinda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First and foremost, I want to commend the drafters of the Children's Bill 2021. And I say from the onset, we'll definitely support this bill for several reasons, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the first reason is the right to protect our kids in Kenya and in the Republic of Kenya, and make sure that our young generation, which is the future of this nation, is clearly taken care of through this bill. Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that parental responsibility squarely becomes mandatory under this bill. Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the issue of adoption. We know very well the procedures to be followed for adopting children in this country. Some have been tedious, and I know within this bill, it becomes very easy to make sure that adoption process, it is taken care of properly. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, which is being taken care of is the issue of custody. As my colleague Geshima said, the custody of the young ones when probably there is a difference between the relationship or in the marriage. And we want to make sure that at least these kids or the young generation and the future generation of Kenya is taken care of. There is the issue of the maintenance, how to look after those young people. There is the issue of guidance and care. And then the issue of protection to the kids and administration of children's institutions within the country. So, Mr. Speaker, these are quite elaborate bill which need total support from all of us as members. And I believe that it even contains related provisions of parental responsibility, extension of the responsibility, even beyond 18 years, 18th or the 18th birthday of every kid in this country. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say this bill comes very timely because as we look at the change in the society and the culture coming up with the social media and the Western culture influencing the African culture, we are going to look and see how best we can protect our young ones and our youth from some of the practices probably which are being introduced to the young generation in this country through social media, through coercing, through recruitment, through being encouraged to join some of the weird practices like gayism, lesbianism, and other practices we are foreseeing coming into our society. And I believe that as we go to the second reading, we are going to sit down as members of parliament and with the lawyers to see how best can we protect these young ones, Mr. Speaker. Because if you look keenly, some of those recruiters or some of those people who are bringing this kind of culture and introduce it to our young boys and girls, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the culture, for the African culture, we need to see the best, and I think I'll need to sit down with Honorable Kishimo when we are doing the amendments during the second reading to protect even the young ones and see if somebody tries to bring a culture which we cannot accept as parents and as guardians and as leaders in this country, how do we protect the Kenyan people? And I think this squarely lies within this parliament. And as I said over the weekend in my constituency, we'll be very firm to protect the youth of this country. Very firm. Because some of the practices being introduced to our youth are completely out of religious teachings, out of the African teaching, out of normal practice of what we expect. And I believe this bill will carry all those provisions to make sure that at least we can be able to protect the children in this country, the youth in this country, whereby the bill is giving us the National Council of Children's Service and the role of the county governments they need to play at the county levels, Mr. Speaker. Because you see, the county government has extremely role to play because the county governments are the members of county assemblies and also the governor and his government. And they are the people who are supposed to look at all these issues dealing with the administration of children's services in our counties. The issue of financial provisions, which will be funding the council, are well taken care of in clause 53 to 63, Mr. Speaker, and gives us the opportunity to be able to appoint a director of children's services in this country, who will be able to give us guidance, policy, and make sure that all these issues we are talking about are well taken care of. In clause 64 to 69, it contains the general provision relating to children institutions and including establishment and governance structures of administration. This is quite key, Mr. Speaker, because for a long time we have been seeing several children's homes. They are not well guided. They don't know. Even us in the constituency, we don't know whether we are able to fund them through CDF. But I believe after this bill, will be able to, as members of parliament, will be able to fund these children's home to make sure that the most vulnerable kids within the constituencies can be put in place. And the institution where they are probably stay, the children's home, where they are putting up, is well taken care of, and we can be able to fund it through CDF, National Government Constituency Fund. There is the issue of establishment and provision of judiciary establishment of the children's courts. And I know this lies squarely within the provisions of the law and within the new constitution, whereby the children within this country need to have at least a children's court whereby their matters can be. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it can be very traumatizing to the young ones when their issues are just being discussed openly, discussed without protecting the kids, and it becomes very difficult when those kids are growing up and they'll find themselves into issues whereby they can't understand why was I born in this world, which is so cruel to me. And I think that is why we are looking at the provisions of establishing the children's court. We are looking at also the maintenance and the custody, as I said before. Maintenance of those kids is not easy, Mr. Speaker, and especially the kids who are living in the children's home. They need care, they need clothing, they need shelter, they need the actual love they need to be given. And I believe that the maintenance of the young kids, those who are in the children's home, those who are in our houses, is the responsibility of the parents and the government to make sure that these kids are well taken care of. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the guidance or the guardian who takes care of those kids, whereby you find somebody becomes a guardian of a student or a guardian of a certain kid. We need to have very clear provision, and I think I'm very sure they have been taken care of very well in this bill, whereby the guardian himself knows his responsibility and where he cannot go further. Mr. Speaker, I think you need to have me a few minutes because this is something which is very close to my heart of defending the voiceless. There is the issue of conflict in law, which it's well taken care of in clause 219 to clause 245, whereby we need to be able, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that the conflict in law does not affect the young ones, does not affect the children.
1 minute to conclude that thought.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me that 1 minute. So, Mr. Speaker, what you are saying is that this a well comprehensive bill to protect the young ones in this country is a very comprehensive bill which will take it into consideration as quickly as possible before the close of business for this 13th Parliament. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, will have done justice to these young people in this country. And I want to say that we are going to bring amendments to make sure that we protect the kids more to the issues of homosexuality, the issues of lesbianism, the issues of gayism in this country, because we cannot accept some of those practices. And I think it's the high time as a country we become one of the parliament to protect our young and the youth in totality. I want to thank Honorable Kimunya, the leader of majority, and the entire Attorney General office for a well.
Honorable Huru for order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill. It is actually a very comprehensive bill, and it covers actually all the areas which will help us as a country to take good care of our children. Mr. Speaker, you realize that in this country, our children are exposed to a lot of exploitation, abuses, and so on and so forth. And sometimes, unfortunately, by even their own parents and also next of kins. This particular bill, proposed bill, will help us to deal with issues of children abuse. For instance, when you look at the issues of child labor, you realize that children who come from economically disadvantaged homes sometimes are used to earn income for their households by way of, working as farm helps, herding in pastoral settings. And in some instances, like in urban centers, for example, they are also used on the streets to beg and so on and so forth. With this law, we shall be able to shield our children as a nation from that kind of abuses. The bill also helps us as a country to give effect to various constitutional provisions relating to children's rights. Right to basic education, for example, and it highlights responsibility of parents to enroll their children in institutions providing basic education and so on and so forth. And it also gives provision for children to access social security, where the parents or the guardians are not able to take care of their welfare. Then it obligates the two levels of governments and other stakeholders to make provision for the same. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the various provisions, for example, relating to the various rights, the right to education, the right to health, as well as religious education and so on and so forth, protection from child labor, issues of inheritance, right of children with disabilities. If you look at, for example, the right of children with disabilities, you realize that if you look at their right of access to basic educations, in most parts of this republic, we do not have special schools. For example, in entire north, Upper Eastern, where I come from, for example, from Moyale all the way to Isiolo, Wajir, part of Northeastern, Wajir, Mandera, unless the kid, the parents or the guardians have ability to transfer this child with disability and therefore special need, a need for special education, unless the guardian is able to transfer her to other parts of Kenya, these facilities are not available. I'm sure with passage of this law, which I'm very optimistic probably we can have it concluded and have it accented too before the end of this 12th Parliament, we shall be able to use it actually to make sure that the national government, the county government, and other stakeholders will make provision for institutions of providing special education in different parts of our republic. And if you look at also the right of kids, the right of children, to picketing and also to protest, I think sometimes when kids have observed certain things which happen in the environment, including the school environment, there is need to distinguish between issues of indiscipline and also issue of genuine expression of concerns. And I'm sure this law and probably other regulation which may come along with this law once it is passed will be able to provide opportunities for our children to voice their concerns within some legal framework and so on and so forth. And if you look at the right of child to a name and registration of the same, Mr. Speaker, again, just as the case is for special education institutions, you realize that the offices for registering children after birth are only found, particularly in the north, are only found at the county headquarters. So with the passage of this bill, probably it will help us as members of parliament using the national government constituency development funds to establish offices of registration of birth and death in, in locations, in wards, and so on and so forth, so that these offices then can be, can have personnel posted by Director of Children's Services, so that then these registrations can easily take place. And in the current situation, actually, when children reach the age of enrolling in school and they are required to have birth certificate, in most of our counties, we are forced actually either to pay per diems for these officers to go around and do some kind of mobile outreach, or the parents are forced to travel many kilometers to county headquarters to access these services. I'm sure given these challenges which we have, particularly those of us who are from the northern Kenya, this bill will help us to address such concerns. Mr. Speaker, the bill is so comprehensive and it is so bulky, and I hope we shall have opportunity to digest it appropriately and try and see to it that once it is passed, all the provisions relating to enhancement of children's welfare are going to be attained. And of course, the issue of also extending responsibility of parents beyond the age of 18. There are children who are born with disabilities, and therefore attainment of the age of 18 may not be sufficient for them to be able to lead an independent life outside the care of their parents or the guardians. And therefore, that provision is also a good provision. With those few remarks, I would like to support the bill and also thank the drafters and hope that we shall be able to conclude the debate and have it passed before the term of our current parliament, 12th parliament, ends. Thank you very much.
We shall now have Honorable CTNA Kobe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wish to add my voice to my colleagues, and outright I would want to thank the drafters of this bill and all the stakeholders for bringing this bill, the Children's Bill 2021, because this bill seeks to align the Children Act with our Constitution, which is the supreme law. This bill has provisions that seeks to protect the children and their welfare, because our children have a right to the very basic needs, which is food, shelter, clothing, and this bill is going to ensure that the welfare of our children is taken care of. It will also protect our children from harmful cultural practices. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill because it contains provisions on parental responsibility, so that we are looking at the children that have actually been left by parents who have actually sired or given forth to them, but they have not taken responsibility. So this bill is going to seek parental responsibility and ensure every child who has been sired must be protected by that parent. Mr. Speaker, I also support this bill strongly because it has a provision for extension of responsibility. Mr. Speaker, we have a number of children that have disabilities that still go beyond the age of 18, and they are subjected to a lot of abuse. So I want to believe this bill is going to protect such kind of children, Mr. Speaker, because most of them, especially those who are mentally derailed, those who have disabilities, you find that when parents are away, there are those abusers that take advantage of them. This bill also, Mr. Speaker, provides for safeguarding the interest of the child as properly documented in the first schedule, and therefore it is going to give that child primary consideration, which is very critical. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this bill because the passage of this bill will ensure that we have no or minimum street children, because the government is going to take responsibility in provision of institutions to take care of these children. And we will also have most of the parents. Mr. Speaker, most of the parents are hiding the children who are PWDs in their households. They are never taken to school, they are never provided for. So those children suffer to death, and this bill is going to ensure that those interests are safeguarded. That's why, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to support this bill and also to thank the people who actually put this in place, and the Leader of Majority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity.
Honorable Gary Mwaniki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to add my voice to this very important legislative framework concerning the very vulnerable of our society. They say the way to gauge the conscience of a society is to look at how they treat their very vulnerable. Our children do not have a voice. Most of them do not even know where they can run for help. So I'm very happy by the drafters of the bill and for Parliament rising to the occasion to provide and to do their job, which is to provide the legislative framework that will protect our children, who are the very vulnerable. The Constitution 2010 gave a very robust Bill of Rights, but a lot was not done to give justice to our children. But there was a mention of our children in Article 53, for which this bill now seeks to expound on and provide a much deeper legislative framework to be able to govern the way we treat our children. Honorable Speaker, the Children's Act 2001 made an attempt to give a legislative framework to govern the way we manage affairs relating to our children, but this one is an improved version of it. It's going to give us a broader mechanism on issues to do with fostering of our children, adoption mechanism, custody, maintenance, guardianship, care and protection of the children. It will also provide the regulation mechanism and a legal framework, including establishment of the National Council Children's Services, which we believe will be a better body to take care of our children, given the inadequacies by our Children Welfare Society at the moment. So, Honorable Speaker, this bill also recognizes the two institutions of governance, the national government and the county government, and apportions responsibilities relating to our children to both the national and the county governments. It has also gone ahead and given, certain more detailed issues relating to criminal responsibility, including provisions to the right of criminal responsibility of a child, which has now been amended to 12 years. Issues to do with the adoption have been, a very, a dicey issue, where we have had no clear way, because we have had people coming from abroad and adopting our children with no clear regulatory mechanism. Now, this bill disallows some of those previous abuses and provides who then can adopt our children. Honorable Speaker, the bill also provides the proviso for the Cabinet Secretary to undertake review and implementation of policies and legislative actions, even as changes in our society occurs. Even as we develop, even with this time of the information age, our children also get exposed to unnecessary materials or information that their minds cannot digest. This bill is giving answers to those concerns. We know our children at times have been subjected to pornographic materials and violent ICT materials that then affect their development. This bill protects us and provides a legislative framework for which the rights of the children in relation to those kind of issues are concerned. So another thing that the bill seeks to provide, and for which I'm very happy with is on areas of emotional and mental distress. A lot of the times, because our children at times are not able to speak for themselves, they get depressed, they get emotionally distressed and mentally distressed, but we have not had mechanisms on how we can ensure protection of our children and ensuring that they are not subjected to abuse, mental abuse, through cyber crimes and cyber information in this era of ICT. I want to also join what I've had my colleagues saying, that the responsibility of a child go beyond the 18 years that the previous bill had provided, particularly where a child takes time to develop or has development disorders or severe disability. The court can grant custody of such a child either to the parents or to a responsible body. On the issue of the children courts, this bill has gone extensively to even provide for courts, designated courts and designated registrars to handle matters relating to our children, even in relation to children relief and criminal-related matters. So this bill is going to be an answer to so many of the issues that previously were a challenge to those taking care of our children. The bill also has given provisions on how we can take care and protect our street children. A child is a child. Be they a street child, be they a child in a normal home, all of them deserve care by the society, care by the government. And so this bill is providing for what can be done in case there is a child who needs that care and that protection, be they a child that is just a street child. It provides how they can be taken care of and provides mechanisms on how the government can take care of them in a foster home. The responsibility of the bill, that the bill visits on the counties, will ensure that some of the challenges we've been finding in the villages where foster children or children who are left by both parents, most of our villages do not have foster homes where those children can be taken care of. So this bill is giving answers to those kind of situations. And as my colleague said, we will hope that even in devolved funds, including like CDF, provisions can be made on how quick attention can be given when we need to take care of these kind of children. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to add my voice and to say I support this bill. We know what has been happening to our children in human trafficking, issues relating to female genital mutilation, and all this. So we hope that with the passing of this legislation, those issues will be catered for legislatively, and also there will be an institution framework to take care of our children. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support. Thank you.
Nabo Jiru Muchangi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important bill. And I want to thank the leader, the majority leader, Honorable Kemunya, for this very good job that has been done on the Children Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, children are our future, and we have a duty as a nation, as a parliament, and as a people to protect and to ensure the welfare of our children so that we can live to see a better nation tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to protect our children from from exploitation, both sexual or even in terms of labor. Mr. Speaker, I have gone to places and got to hear very sad stories of children who were taken advantage of sexually, either just because they were naive, or even curious, or even disabled. But I am happy that we now have a bill that will ensure that our children are not exploited sexually, or even by those people who want to acquire cheap labor that comes with children. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to enhance the role of parents in the welfare of our children, because we know very well there are those parents who sire kids and abandon them along the way at the point of birth, or even sometimes later in life, which is a very bad thing, Mr. Speaker. And you find that some of these children are children who are very brilliant and who deserve attention, children who deserve love from both of their parents. You find that we have children who are roaming around in the streets, yet both of their parents are present and are alive. So this bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to protect them and to ensure that their parents takes good care of them. Mr. Speaker, our children have rights. Right to quality education, right to quality health care. And there is no reason why, Mr. Speaker, a child in this country should lack quality education. In most cases, you will find that these children, these very children who come from very poor families, sometimes struggle and lack school fees. But this bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to ensure that none of our children lacks an opportunity to go to school, or even attention whenever necessary, may it be healthcare or medication. Mr. Speaker, our children also have a right to expression. And you realize, and especially in these modern days, Mr. Speaker, our children have opinions and ideas, and they require attention. So we need, Mr. Speaker, to encourage the habit of listening to our children, because we believe, even though they may not be right every time, they require attention so that we can get along properly with them. Mr. Speaker, this bill also seeks to protect our children from archaic and those cultural habits that demean them, including female genital mutilation. So we believe, with the coming to authorization of this bill, Mr. Speaker, we will not have our children exploited or taken advantage of by those bad elements in our society. This bill, Mr. Speaker, also seeks to place both the county and the national government with roles that are clearly spelled out to ensure that the welfare of our children are well taken care of. And I hereby want to support and ask all the members to support it so that we can get a better nation for our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, honorable members, there seems to be no further interest on this one, but I had earlier indicated that the debate will remain open until the committee tables its report, so that then we will still have further opportunities for members who would like to speak to this important bill after that. So the debate remains open. Next order.
Order number 11, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2020.
Chairperson, Departmental
Second
Committee.
reading.
Yes, Chairperson's Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. That chairperson isn't present. That is dropped. Yeah, that will be rescheduled by the House Business Committee at an appropriate time. Next order.
Order number 12, the National Electronic Single Window System Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2021, second reading.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would wish to ask that this be stepped down to await the committee report, which I believe is scheduled for adoption this weekend.
Okay, Majority Leader, that is stepped down. Next order.
Order number 13, the Huduma Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2021, second reading.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, again, for the same reasons of the lack of a report and even the committee not being here to give their views on this report, on this bill, I would ask that this bill be stepped down for now.
Okay, Majority, I agree that be stepped down until to give room for the committee's report. Next order.
Order number 14, the Elections Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2022, second reading.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I think we had already discussed this earlier with the substantive speaker, that we await this committee report for this one. Hopefully, we get it by tomorrow. If not, we will probably seek leave of the indulgence to start debate on it tomorrow. But the committee is working on it, and I hope they will have the report by tomorrow. So in the meantime, we can step it down.
Okay, Majority, I agree that should be stepped down. Next order.
Order number 16, the Advocates Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2021, second reading.
Did you do 15? Okay, okay. Yes. The Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. That Chairperson isn't here. I guess for the same reason, Majority Leader. They probably will have to table the report first. Other members, there being no other business. The time being 7 minutes after 6 p.m. This House started adjourned until Wednesday, 25th March 2022 at 9:30 a.m.